Hello EVERYPONY and welcome to by far my biggest and most ambitious video yet. That being a multi-hour long review of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Now I'm sure you're probably wondering why I'm doing this video in the first place, and more importantly why it's over 3 hours long. To answer the first question, it's because I finally decided to sit down, rewatch, and also finish the series, which I started way back in 2013. Back then, I got into the show, was obsessed with it for half a year, and then continued to watch it until 2017. But by then, I got more invested in other things like anime and manga, and after finishing the show's 7th season, I just lost interest. The series then continued for another 2 years, had another 2 seasons, and ended in late 2019. Now, despite the series ending, I still didn't have much interest as well as time to sit down and finish it. But recently, I just said, fuck it, let's finish the series. However, since it's been so long since I last watched any of it, I thought I wouldn't remember much, so I ended up watching it all from the beginning. When I first started rewatching it, I was just doing it for my own personal enjoyment. However, after watching 20-ish episodes, I realized I could make a video on it. And not just any video, but one where I'd rank every single episode in the series from worst to greatest. Now I know this isn't the most original idea, and I know other people have already done this, but I haven't, and I wanted to try doing a video like this since it sounds fun, but also a shit ton of work. And to answer the second question, it's over 3 hours because it just is. Anyway, yes, I will be ranking every single episode of the show from worst to greatest. Before I begin though, I have to make some things clear. If you don't care about the rules and how the rankings work and just want to get to the start of the video, then you can skip to this time. Anyway, I'm going to keep my thoughts somewhat brief, although that doesn't mean I always will. There are episodes I have a lot to say about, but there are also some that I just don't. So the amount of time I'll spend on each episode will vary from only a couple sentences to a couple minutes, and since I'll be very short on some episodes, I apologize if I don't make the strongest or detailed statements about them. For those who don't know, the series is over 200 episodes long, so because of that, you are going to have at least a couple episodes that you disagree with me on. There are going to be episodes that I like that you don't like, and there are going to be episodes that you like that I don't like. And because I might not have much to say about an episode you disagree with me on, I recommend that you let me know why that is in the comments section. I try to justify my reasons for why I believe said episodes are good or bad, and I am open to hearing others' opinions. But again, I will make the reasons for why I like or dislike an episode very clear, especially if it's one that's considered to be controversial or one that I seem to have a unique opinion on. Now that leads me to another point, which is that I'm using IMDb's ratings for episodes as a source for how the fandom feels about each episode. I know this isn't the most accurate way to tell whether the fandom overall likes or dislikes an episode, but it's the most efficient and easiest way for me. If I were to watch and read multiple reviews on each episode, this video wouldn't come out until next year, and no, I'm not exaggerating. So yes, although this isn't the best way to tell how an episode is viewed, it's the fastest and again, most efficient way for me to make my points. During the video, I'll be saying phrases like hot take, overrated, and underrated. Again, if it turns out that what I'm saying isn't actually true, then don't get mad at me. I'm just going off IMDb's ratings. As I've said, I will be ranking each episode of the series, which includes every episode from seasons 1 to 9, as well as the best gift ever. So there won't be any movies, specials, shorts, or anything else on here besides best gift ever, since I count that as a regular episode. Next, I'll be rating each episode on a score of 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. I'll go over each numerical score in detail later when I get to them. Another thing I should mention is that the rankings for each episode does matter, although some of them are interchangeable. The series is over 200 episodes, so it's difficult to sort each and every one of them from worst to greatest. Basically, the rankings matter, but don't get mad that I put one episode one spot above another, because that's just stupid. I'll also put it this way to make it easier. If there's a 10 ranking gap between episodes with the same rating, then I think the higher episode is only ever so slightly better than the lower one. But if there's a 30 the episode gap, then the higher episode is easily better than the lower one. That also means that just because an episode has the same rating as another one doesn't mean it's just as good as it.
Shut your bitch ass up!
Next, I won't be ranking the episodes in a vacuum. This pretty much means that I'll be a bit nicer to some of the earlier episodes and a bit harsher on some of the later ones. So for example, there's the Showstoppers, which is a very nothing of an episode. In a vacuum, it should be ranked lower than it is on the list, but I'm willing to give it some leeway. It's only a season 1 episode and it's nothing offensive, it's just kinda pointless. There's also an episode like 246 Great, which is pretty bad, but I'm being harsher on it since it's a season 9 episode. It's another dash hole episode, and by that point I was just sick of them, so that's why it's ranked so low on the list. I'm not saying the later seasons aren't allowed to make mistakes, but when they make these same mistakes over and over again, that's when I get frustrated. Now that being said, just because an episode is from the first couple seasons doesn't mean it's free from being shit on. There are some terrible episodes in the first couple seasons, so don't say I'm being too nice on them, since I'm not. Next, I need to mention how exactly I'm rating each episode. Since this is a show aimed at and meant for small children, I believe the lessons in the show are very important. If a lesson isn't handled well or is outright bad, then most likely the episode isn't going to be ranked high. However, if a lesson is dumb but the episode overall was fun, then I'm not going to say it's a bad episode since I had a good time watching most of it. Even though lessons are important, the most important part of an episode is how much I enjoyed it. My overall enjoyment comes from its writing, comedy, characters, concepts, and sometimes even the songs too. However, because the episode's rating comes from my personal enjoyment, that means that if I find an episode to be boring, it's going to be ranked low. If I wasn't having fun while watching an episode or even got bored by it, then what's the point of it? I understand that in terms of writing, there might not be anything wrong with it, but I personally didn't care for it. Luckily, there's not that many episodes that are low ranked because they were boring, which is good since I would mainly say that they're boring, and that's it. Next, all the two-parters will count as one episode and won't be listed separately. I think it's sort of dumb to rank them separately, especially since most of them are about the same in terms of quality. That being said, there are a few of them that are affected by this rule, and I'll point out which ones are when I get to them. Finally, one more thing before I begin this monster of a video. I'm the Harem reviewer, and My Little Pony is a harem anime, so I'm allowed to review it. There's not only one harem in it, but two. Yes, two harems in one series. Spike has Rarity, Ember, and Gabby, and Big Mac has Cheerly, Marble, and Sugar Bell. So yes, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is a harem. I can review it, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So, at the very bottom of the barrel, we have the 1 out of 10 episodes, and good lord, they are atrocious. Are they the absolute worst things I've ever seen? No, but they're still god-awful episodes. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if I'd find a 1 out of 10 episode, since although the series had some really shitty episodes, none of them were appallingly bad. That, however, changed in the later seasons, where we got a couple episodes that were just jaw-droppingly offensive. Fortunately, or I guess unfortunately, there's only 4 of them, so let's start with the worst of the worst. Yakety Sax. I had to think this one over for a bit, but after a while, I actually think Yakety Sax is the absolute worst episode in the series. In some ways it's better, but in others it's way worse than the next episode on the list. So in this episode, Pinky annoys everyone by playing a sax from Yakistan, and she's really bad at doing it. Eventually Twilight realizes that Pinky is a problem, but she wants to lie to her and not tell her that she's bad, but more importantly, annoy. This is infuriating because she just learned this lesson literally 10 episodes ago, which Applejack even brings up. Thankfully, Twilight tells Pinky that she's a problem, however, she only tells her that she's bad and that she's wasting her time trying to get better at playing it.
What the fuck?
That wasn't the problem. How do you fuck up this badly? The problem is that Pinky keeps annoying everybody, not the fact that she's bad. If she wants to practice to get better or just have fun, then fine, but she can practice somewhere isolated like in her own home. If you just told her this, then there wouldn't be a problem. But that's not all, because there's still half the episode left. Pinky then gets crippling depression because her life's happiness now solely comes from playing a stupid sax, which is really stupid. It gets so bad that she wants to move to Yakistan, which is even more retarded. When she's there, she plays the sax in front of the yaks, and even though she's awful, they all cheer for her. But that doesn't make any sense, because the yaks hate everything that isn't perfect, so why are they fine with this? I don't know. I guess it's because the writers for this episode snorted crack up their ass. But that leads us to the end of the episode, where Pinky learns that she should keep playing the sax even though she annoys everyone when she plays it. Jesus Christ. How do you fuck up an episode this badly? How do you miss the entire point of the episode you made? This episode has a horrendous and misguided message. It's ridiculously stupid and not the good kind, and it's just really frustrating to watch.
Can't you see your constant fighting is tearing us all apart?
Non-compete clause. I'm gonna be honest, when I first watched this, I didn't think it was that bad, although it was still shit. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how horrendous this episode truly was. Applejack and Rainbow Dash are fighting and competing over being Teacher of the Month at their school. They're both assholes to each other, and then halfway through they stop and pretend to compliment each other, which is insanely unfunny and annoying. They both feel regressed to how they were in Season 1, which is why this episode is appalling. This episode is just a really shitty remake of Fall Weather Friends, which was a really good Season 1 episode. That episode had Dash and Applejack compete with each other, although they eventually got too competitive and started turning into assholes. The reason it worked there was because that episode was really entertaining, funny, and was also a Season 1 episode. Dash and Applejack felt in character there, but here they've regressed so much for no reason. This is just a really frustrating and awful episode, and it doesn't help that they continue to argue when the episode ends too. Also, this is a really dumb complaint, but according to this episode, at least 8 months have now passed since the school's opened. It's only been like 6 episodes since the school opened, so that's odd, but that's the least of this episode's problems. Like I said, originally I didn't think this episode was as bad as people said it was. However, once I realized it was just an awful remake of Fall Weather Friends, that's where I said, okay, yeah, this is offensively bad. I'm fine with the episode reusing the same lesson from a previous episode, but to have the same 2 characters learn it again is where I draw the line. They reuse this lesson again in a Trivial Pursuit, but at least it's a different character learning this, plus the episode is really fun to watch. But here, where you have the exact same plot, characters, and lesson being reused, that's just unacceptable.
Welcome to Sex on a Plane prank.
28 pranks later. I had this as the worst episode ever since I watched it, but as you can see, I changed it at the last couple minutes. It's ever so slightly better than Yakety Sack and Non-Compete Clause, but that's not saying much. The only reason is because at least this episode knows what its problem and lesson are, and that's literally it. Besides that, everything else about this episode is appalling. As soon as the episode begins, you could tell it's going to be atrocious. It starts with Rainbow Dash pranking and scaring Fluttershy, which, may I remind you, she knew not to do in literally the 5th episode of the show. She wants to prank her at first, but then Pinky reminds her that she's too sensitive, which Dash realizes and then decides not to prank her. Seriously, how do you manage to fuck up this badly? It takes effort to write something this horrible. Now, Fluttershy has grown since the first season, but I'm pretty sure she still doesn't like pranks, and I also don't think the writers thought of this either.
Got him!
After this, Dash goes around town and pranks everyone because she's just an asshole for no reason. Later, Dash messes with the CMC's cupcakes, they deliver them to everyone in Ponyville, they act like zombies and prank Dash. It's insanely stupid, predictable, boring, and unfunny. This would be horrendous for a season 1, 2, or even 3 episode, but no, this is a season 6 episode, which is just unacceptable. I'm not saying the writers aren't allowed to fuck up and make mistakes, but this is just ridiculous. Dash doesn't even feel like Dash here. She feels even more regressed than she was in the first season. At least in season 1, she knew not to prank Fluttershy and also knew where to draw the line when it came to pranking. Also, this is a really dumb nitpick, but even the Cake Twins pretend to be zombies at the end too. I know this is really silly, but it doesn't make sense. They're babies. They shouldn't be able to do this. So yeah, in this episode, Rainbow Dash learns not to be an asshole. If you want to have some fun during this video, then you can play a drinking game. Every time a character learns not to be an asshole, take a sip of beer. I would say take a shot, but I don't want you to die of alcohol poisoning.
All we need is somebody to lean on.
Fluttershy leans in. I don't understand what the point of this episode was. Fluttershy tells her friends that she wants to make a sanctuary for the animals of the forest. Applejack, Rarity, and Pinky send someone they each know over to help her build it. However, all of them are assholes for no reason and want to make the sanctuary different from how Fluttershy wants it. Fluttershy tells them no, but they do it anyway and the whole thing fails. Then Fluttershy gets one of her friends from a season 5 episode to do the job for her, which he does, and it works, and then the episode ends. When I first watched this episode, I was so confused and my jaw dropped when it ended. I couldn't tell what I had just watched. I feel like basically nothing happened in this episode and there was no lesson either. I think the lesson they're trying to go for is that you should find someone you trust to do a job for you, but that's really dumb because Fluttershy trusts her friends and her friends trust the people they hired for the job too, so that whole concept fails entirely. I think if Fluttershy herself picked people that weren't good for the job, then I think this episode could have worked. Maybe she's in a rush to make the sanctuary, so she just picks random people that aren't qualified, which doesn't work out. I don't think it would be a great episode, but it would certainly be leagues better than what we got. I know I'm being a bit harsher on this since this is a season 7 episode, but still, at the very least, this episode is terrible. It's confusing, slow, boring, unfunny, and pointless. Well, that was all the 1 out of 10 episodes, so at least we got the absolute worst of the worst out of the way first. But now we have the 2 out of 10 episodes, which, while slightly better, are still some of the worst episodes of the show. These episodes are still offensively bad, poorly written, sometimes boring, and just awful. And the worst of them is... One Bad Apple.
John C.
I really want to give this episode a 1 out of 10, but what barely raises this to a light 2 out of 10 is its song. Babseed is such a catchy and well-written song, and it's definitely one of the better ones in the series. I just wish it wasn't in such an offensively bad episode. A lot of people hate this episode, and it's pretty obvious why. Babs bullies the CMC for half the episode, and after a while the CMC decides to fuck her over since they've had enough of her. But right before they're able to, Applejack tells them that Babs was bullied in her hometown, so they instead decide not to mess with her. The CMC then say that they were in the wrong because they turned into bullies, which is just wrong. All they're doing is trying to defend themselves since Babs is bullying them, so they're in the right. Also, Babs being bullied and getting pitied for it is disgusting. That's not an excuse for being a fucking asshole. Applejack then tells the CMC that they should have just gone to her first when Babs started bullying them, which isn't right either. Going to an adult is an option, but it's not the only option. The CMC trying to solve their bullying problem by themselves is a good and better solution. If you teach your kids to always go to a grown-up to fix their problems, that's not good. Yes, it'll probably fix the bullying problem, but it'll make you look like a pushover by a lot of people around you. There's really no great solution to bullying, but the CMC trying to fuck over for Babs was the best thing they could have done. Also, one tiny detail that would have made this episode better would be us seeing Applejack yell at Babs for being a giant cunt. I don't even know if she yelled at her at all, which is ridiculous. At least give me the satisfaction of seeing Applejack tell Babs to fuck off. But yeah, the first 2 acts of this episode aren't actually that bad. It's just the last act that falls apart and completely ruins this episode. The lesson is disgustingly bad and Babs doesn't get punished. In fact, she gets pitied and becomes the CMC's friend, which makes me sick. If it wasn't for the very catchy song, this would have easily been a 1 out of 10 and most likely would have been the worst episode in the entire show. What about Discord? Here's a great idea. Let's make a Discord episode, but have Discord not be funny besides maybe one joke. This is a Twilight torture porn where Discord makes all of her friends laugh and tells her that she'll never be in on the joke since she wasn't there for them. All the jokes are extremely unfunny, and I get that's the point, but still, it doesn't make the episode fun. Overall, this episode is really stupid, pointless, and most importantly, boring. I know there are other episodes ranked higher that are boring, but this one in particular really pisses me off. This is Discord, who's one of my favorite characters in the show. Discord is able to turn an episode like Three's a Crowd, which has a sluggish start and a filler song in it, into a great one simply because he's Discord. He's funny and entertaining enough to carry episodes on his own. He even sort of saved the season 4 premiere since that would have been pretty mediocre without him. Here, he just isn't funny and really isn't too much of an asshole either. It's just a really dumb and nothing of an episode. Twilight thinks Discord put everyone under a spell, which would have been interesting, but no. Everyone just finds him funny, and then they don't, and then everything is back to normal, and then the episode ends, and I want to die.
1, 2, 3, 4.
2, 4, 6 great, excluding Daring Doubt, which I consider a Daring Do episode, not a Dash one. This is the last Dash episode. And as the last Dash episode, it's pretty terrible. I'm being harsh on this one since it's a season 9 episode, but still, why are there so many awful Dash hole episodes? Dash is an asshole for no reason. Again, and she doesn't want to help the cheerleading team at school because I don't fucking know. The episode is extremely predictable, it's not fun, and besides the students fucking up during their practice, it really isn't funny either. To make it worse, Snips is in this episode for some reason, and he's really obnoxious. I just wanted T-Rex to come out of nowhere and step on him. But yeah, this episode is god-awful. I hate it. Take another drink, because Dash learned not to be an asshole. Again.
Well.
The mysterious Mayor Duel. This episode is terrible. I know it, you know it, everyone knows it. This is probably the first punching bag episode of the series, which pretty much everyone shit on. Owls Well That Ends Well and Look Before You Sleep were bad episodes, but this is on a brand new level of shit. Dash goes around saving people and then turns into a pompous, cocky asshole. Even for Dash, who's best pony out of the main 6, this is way too much even for her. The episode is so predictable that I even guessed how it would end back when I was 13 and first watched it. I said that Mayor Duel is going to be all the ponies, and it turned out that my retard 13-year-old self was right for once. It's not fun to watch at all, it's not funny, it's mainly just infuriating and also boring. Also, Rainbow Dash now has a fan club for some reason, but compared to everything else, that's not really a problem. But yeah, take another drink because Dash learned not to be an asshole. Dragon Quest.
Oh, that's hot.
Okay, let's start with the things this episode does right. Both the rock music and some of the dragons' designs were good. There's also a scene where Spike is going through an identity crisis, which is genuinely good too. But besides those minor things, the rest of this episode is dog, or I guess dragon shit. There's a lot wrong with this episode. First off, how are there no books or information on dragons? You're telling me that all you know about dragons is the dragon migration and that's it? Also, in Secret of My Excess, we learn that all dragons are assholes, so why wouldn't Twilight have told Spike about that? If she did, then Spike wouldn't have bothered going to the Dragonlands in the first place. All of the dragons are generic assholes. They aren't interesting, funny, or memorable. Garble, who isn't even named at all in this episode isn't memorable because there's multiple dragons here, so they all just feel the same. He actually works in an episode like Gauntlet of Fire because he's the main antagonist of the episode. Also, there aren't others with him, so he actually stands out there.
That kid kicks sand and Pooh can't say.
Another thing that's really dumb is that the dragons fall for Rarity, Twilight, and Dash in the dragon suit. I know it makes her one of the few good jokes in the episode, but I still find it difficult to believe that they'd fall for this. That's just one of the smaller issues with this episode though, since it clearly has a lot of other problems. I don't really get why Spike starts to like or wants to hang out with the dragons either. I know he's a kid and wants to impress people that are older than him, but they're all assholes to him. Like, I know he's an asshole himself, or mainly in the first half of the series, but he wouldn't turn out to be as bad as these dragons are. I think this concept could have worked, or at least would have made more sense if this was one of the first episodes of the show. Spike really only knew and talked to Twilight before coming to Ponyville, so I could see him being less knowledgeable about friendship then. But this is the end of season 2, and he's been in Ponyville for a while now. And because of that, he should also know that Ponyville is his home and that his family is there. Why does he want to stay with the dragons and not move back? That's really fucking stupid. This episode is dragon shit. It's predictable and annoying.
I'm a fire in my leg.
You might be able to have some dumb fun with it and laugh at how bad it is, but it's not much.
Dear pesky plumbers,
You've saved me.
Spike at your service. This episode is infamously terrible. For the entire episode, Spike is obnoxious and bothers Applejack, and it's unpleasant and really not fun to watch at all. Applejack saves Spike's life from some god-awful CG Timberwolves, so now he has to spend the rest of his life serving her because of some stupid dragon code bullshit. Later in the episode, Applejack decides that she's going to fake being in danger so Spike can save her life. But then when she tries to do that, Spike finds out that she's faking it. But then, oh no, now she's actually in danger, and it's just like how it was when she was trying to fake it. It's fucking retarded, and I hate it, and I don't know who thought this episode was a good idea. I guess if you want to see an Applejack torture porn, then this is the episode for you. The only thing this episode has going for it is that it's so god-awful, infuriating, and bad that it's sort of interesting and entertaining. I guess this is an episode that's so bad that you can have some fun and laugh at it. If you like cringe, then you might enjoy this, but that's really being generous. It's not a so bad it's good sort of thing unless you just like bad episodes.
When some pony tries to block, show them that you're wrong.
Putting your hoof down. If you want to be nice, then I'd say this is the best of the most terrible episodes, but that's not really a compliment. There's a lot wrong with this episode, and it all fails apart due to one reason. So many people in this episode are assholes for no goddamn reason. This is Ponyville, where many ponies are supposed to be nice. Why is everyone suddenly a bunch of shit nuggets? It's not even that there's just 1 or 2 people that are dicks. There's like 10 of them. Seriously, what the fuck is going on here?
Breakfast!
It's so unrealistic and it destroys the entire episode. I never liked Angel before, but this episode is what made me despise him. He slaps Fluttershy across the face and kicks her out of her own house and doesn't even get punished for it. Throughout the episode, you see Fluttershy yelling and being a cunt towards people, and not all of them are justified. The first says Fluttershy fuck over some guy who's purposely killing her flowers, so that one does make sense. However, the next one has her dump garbage on 2 ponies because they won't move out of the way on a bridge. Did she forget she has wings? I know the 2 of them were shitheads, but you could have just flown around them. Then some jerk cuts in front of her and then she scares her away, which is also justified. However, everything else that happens is just Fluttershy being a big fat meanie, and she's entirely in the wrong. The thing that annoys me so much is that none of them are Angel. Why? That would have made the episode better and more tolerable. At least I would have got enjoyment from seeing Angel get screamed at. But no, Fluttershy instead yells at Pinky and Rarity because my name Jeff, I don't know. I can understand Fluttershy getting too used to being assertive and mean, but to see her be this mean to her friends is difficult to believe. Also, another thing, she acts like a dickbag ask it to random people instead of, you know, the people that were assholes to her in the first place. That's a concept that actually could have worked. It would have been satisfying seeing Fluttershy give those people as well as Angel a piece of their own medicine. But no, I guess the writers were too stupid to think of that. The final nail in the coffin is Rarity giving some awful advice to Fluttershy early on in the episode. She tells Fluttershy that she should use sex appeal to get what she wants, which is a pretty disgusting message to send to young girls. It also doesn't help that, again, the person Rarity is telling Fluttershy to do this to isn't in the wrong at all. How does this episode fuck up this badly? You're punishing characters that don't deserve to be punished, and you're not punishing characters that do deserve to be punished.
When some pony tries to block, show them
These nuts. Ha! Got him!
If I had to say something positive about this episode, it's that it does introduce Iron Will, who's a pretty entertaining character. Sure, he's mainly just a typical motivator, but I like that he's not really an asshole, or at least in this episode he isn't. He's just a regular guy who's trying to run a business, although he still gives out somewhat bad advice. I like that he turns out to be kinda wimpy and just accepts that Fluttershy isn't satisfied and won't pay him. Now, in terms of writing, this is appallingly bad, and honestly it should be a 1 out of 10 episode. However, I can't help it. This episode is kind of entertainingly terrible. Iron Will is fun, there are some pretty funny moments, and it was fun seeing Fluttershy be an asshole for once. That being said, although it's nowhere near as rough to watch as a lot of the other terrible episodes, it's easily one of the worst written episodes of the show. It gives out disgusting messages to young girls, and it doesn't punish people who deserve to be punished. And as always, there's the lesson, which is Fluttershy learning not to be an asshole. Drink your beer now. Well, that was the 2 out of 10 episodes, so it's time to move on to the 3 out of 10 episodes. These next batch of episodes are pretty bad, although I wouldn't quite say they're outright terrible. These episodes fail, but they don't fail as hard as the episodes we've gone over so far. They're still some of the weakest episodes of the show, but they aren't the absolute worst. And the first of them is...
Meow?
Just for sidekicks. Oh boy, another Spike episode, and guess what? It sucks. Spike is an asshole again and watches over everyone's pets just so he could eat some jewels. It's a very slow-paced episode. It takes the entire first act until Spike is finally alone with all the pets. After that, the episode becomes very predictable, and because it's a Spike episode, it's not fun. At the very least, the CMC are in this episode, so they make this more entertaining and bearable. Honestly, if they weren't in this episode, this probably would have been a 2 out of 10 since I really don't like anything else in it. I think it's fine seeing Spike give up all his gems, but why does Granny Smith want one? And more importantly, why doesn't she care that her own fucking dog is with someone who's clearly not taking care of her? It feels pretty out of character for her to do this, and is also pretty shitty of her to do too. The same thing happens with Sakura and everyone else in the episode. For whatever reason, I guess everyone just wants gems now, so that's dumb. But yeah, this episode is just frustrating, predictable, boring, and not fun. Also, drink your beer because Spike learned not to be an asshole. Again.
Merry Christmas, asshole.
Hearts-warming Eve. So this is one of those episodes that really isn't that bad, and there isn't anything inherently wrong with it. According to IMDb, this is apparently a spicy hot take, but I'm pretty sure I remember a lot of people in the fandom not caring for this one. Like I said, I did not care for this episode at all. It's just really boring. I think getting lore about old Equestria is nice, but the story itself is just really mediocre. Sure, some jokes are fine, but then again, even the bad episodes in the show still manage to include some good jokes, so that's not really saying much. It's unique to have an episode where everyone is in a play, but again, I just don't care about the story they're telling. Also, this is the first of 5 Christmas specials in the series, and this is by far the worst of them. It's pretty disappointing considering a lot of other shows have great Christmas specials, but this certainly isn't one of them. I guess I can see if people finally find this episode okay, but I really can't understand people loving it.
It ain't easy being cheesy.
It ain't easy being breezies. I hate the breezies. I don't like their designs at all. They're all annoying and don't seem to serve any purpose. They're just small bugs that go around doing nothing, and they even sound annoying too.
My ears.
Seabreeze is completely right in this episode, and everyone is just a bunch of pussies. They all have to leave Fluttershy's house, otherwise they won't make it home in time, and they know this too. Why are so many people in this show assholes? Why does it take so long for Fluttershy to realize that the Breezies need to leave sooner rather than later? Caring for creatures is what she does, so she should already know this. Also, didn't she learn to be more assertive and putting her hoof down anyway? Apparently not, since she's back to being typical Fluttershy again. Also, at the end of the episode, Twilight pulls a spell out of her ass because why not? Everyone turns into breezies and they all look disgusting. The only good things in this episode are Spike admitting that he fucked up immediately, as well as the impressive special effects on Rarity's dress. But besides those very minor things, this episode sucks. The cart before the ponies. This episode really pisses me off because it could have been fun, but no, instead it's just a CMC torture porn. An episode about the CMC making and racing in go-karts sounds good, but what we got is a steaming pile of Spike's turds. The CMC are miserable for most of the episode because Applejack, Rarity, and Dash act inconsiderate because D's nuts. It's really frustrating, annoying, and kinda boring too. There's also a song which is very forgettable and just feels like filler. Another thing that really pisses me off is that she really notices Applejack, Dash, and Rarity sitting in the driver's seats in the CMC's carts. She hints at them to switch spots, and when they say no, she just brushes it off and then walks away. What the fuck is wrong with her? I know Big Mac didn't pound her pussy, but come on, this seems very out of character for her. Does she not care about her students? Why isn't she forcing them not to drive for the CMC? Now, as bad as this episode is, there is one joke in it that is pretty hilarious and has no reason being in an episode as bad as this one. The reason Rarity wants to race again is because she only got second place for creativity when she competed, and the pony she lost to was fucking Derpy Hooves, which is amazing. That had me dying for a solid minute, but unfortunately that's the only good thing about this episode. At the end of it, Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash all learn, drink now, not to be assholes.
The same job for the rest of your life?
Canterlot Boutique. This is going to be a hot take, but I did not care for this episode at all, and I mainly just found it really boring. There's not one, but two songs in this episode, both of which I didn't care for. A new character named Sassy Sandals gets introduced, and she's, guess what? An asshole. And not only that, but she doesn't get punished for being a schmuck, but instead gets rewarded? Yeah, so Rarity decides to let her take over the shop for her while she lives in Ponyville, which is really stupid and irritating. Halfway through the episode, Rarity gets yelled at for changing one of the customers' dresses, which is wrong, but the show wants us to feel sorry for her, so that's dumb. Out of the main 6, Rarity is my least favorite pony, but she can still get some great episodes like Suited for Success and Simple Ways. However, usually when she's by herself, like Rarity Takes Manhattan in this episode, I just don't care for her that much. She works a lot better as a secondary character that gets put alongside another character. But yeah, I don't like this episode. If you like it, then that's fine. I get if people like this, but I don't. Forever Philly. 2 hot takes in a row. I did not like this one. It sort of seems like some pony to watch over me again, but just slightly worse. I'm fine with them trying the concept again since it can make for a good episode, but it just doesn't work here. Unlike some pony to watch over me, this episode is just pretty boring, stupid, and predictable. It's really slow. The intro doesn't start until 2.5 minutes in, and Rarity doesn't actually hang out with Sweetie Belle until halfway through. And then once she does hang out with her, it just turns into a Sweetie Belle torture porn. It also doesn't help that this is a season 7 episode either. If this was in one of the earlier seasons, then it would be slightly higher. I get what they were trying to do here, but I just didn't have fun with this one.
Daddy, no!
Daddy, yes!
Father knows beast. This episode is really stupid and not the good kind. Some dragon comes and tells Spike that he's his father and everyone believes him even though he's obviously lying. Why is everyone this stupid? Wouldn't at least one of them realize that he's a lying sack of shit? One thing that could have been interesting is to have Pinky realize that Sludge is lying since all of his smiles around Spike are fake. That would have been kind of clever, but no, that requires actual effort and the writers clearly didn't use any while writing this. Sludge sings and it's one of the worst songs in the entire show. The instrumental sounds fine, but the singing is awful. It's so bad that I'm sort of fine with it though, since it's at least entertaining and memorable in how bad it is. More importantly though, it doesn't make sense why a dragon who hates cute and soft things decides to sing. Wouldn't someone like him think singing is lame and stupid? The worst part about this episode is that Sludge doesn't even get punished for being an asshole. He just flies away and that's it. They really couldn't have had Rainbow Dash or Twilight or even Smolder burn him or something? That's pretty annoying. Then Spike obviously learns that Twilight is his real parent. It's extremely predictable, stupid, and poorly written. This episode just seems like Dragon Quest again, but ever so slightly better, which is why it's ranked higher than it despite being fairly similar. If it was just as bad, then this might have been something like a 1 out of 10, but that's still up in the air. There is at least one decent thing about this episode, which is that Smolder gets some screen time that doesn't involve the other Student 6 characters. One complaint I have about the Student 6 is that there's not many scenes that focus on the characters individually. Instead, all 6 of them kind of act and feel like one character, which makes all of them feel sort of bland and forgettable. Thankfully, this episode does give Smolder some time away from the rest of them, and I enjoy seeing her interact with Spike. But besides that minor thing, this episode is dragon shit. Some pony to watch over me. So Applejack and Big Mac leave Apple Bloom alone at the barn by herself, but Applejack is worried that she's too young to be home by herself. It's a pretty good concept for an Applejack and Apple Bloom episode. However, instead, Applejack turns into an idiot and acts completely out of character for no reason. It's not even that she's out of character, but it's that she's incredibly out of character and dumbed down that it's ridiculous. Also, her worrying about Apple Bloom being by herself doesn't make sense at all. She hangs out with Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo all the time without any supervision, so why is that fine, but staying home by yourself isn't? Also, doesn't she go to Zeccora's a lot, which is, you know, in the deep, scary, Everfree forest? Why is walking in the dangerous forest by yourself okay, but staying home in a barn isn't? Also, Scootaloo screaming being the reason Applejack finds out that Apple Bloom left is retarded. Couldn't she have turned Sweetie Belle over and noticed that she wasn't Apple Bloom? This episode makes no sense at all. Besides all those things, the third act isn't too bad. The three-headed beast is kinda cool, I guess, and seeing Apple Bloom do everything on her own was fine too. There are at least some really funny jokes in this episode. Apple Bloom being told not to sing because there isn't time for a song is pretty funny. There's also this joke at the end of the episode too.
This pie's even tastier than my mama's swamp water casserole. Oh, mama, don't be like that.
I don't know why, I just found that really funny. But yeah, a big missed opportunity. It's a shit episode. I don't think it's as bad as some people say it is, but it's still really bad.
You'll get a paid day off.
Applejack, stay off. This is a very nothing episode. Applejack goes to the spa with Rarity, fixes a pipe, comes home and realizes that she's wasting a lot of time doing her farm work. The main problem with this episode is that it's boring, poorly written, and not funny besides like 2 decent jokes. Applejack making stupid faces in front of the pigs I liked, and Dash not admitting that she likes going to the spa was fine too. However, the joke does drag on and gets kind of annoying, and they also reuse it again at the end of the episode. The whole thing with Applejack doing more work than she needs to doesn't work because there's barely any hints at it during the episode. In the first scene, she says that her chores have been taking up a lot of time, and then Twilight starts doing one of them and realizes that it's sort of weird. But then after that, the next 10 minutes of the episode is of Applejack and Rarity fixing a pipe at the spa, which is really stupid and pointless. You'd think that they'd cut back to Twilight to show how much time Applejack wastes while doing her chores, but no. No, they don't. Once they go back to the farm, it's obvious that Applejack is doing a lot of stupid things, but it just comes out of nowhere since this episode's writing is so bad.
Your mother's a nice woman, but your grandma's a whore.
Granny's gone wild. Rainbow Dash watches over Granny Smith and 3 of her friends for 20 minutes. Now that sounds exciting, doesn't it?
No.
It's a really dumb concept that doesn't work out. It's a unique idea for sure, but it's not fun to watch and it's mainly just boring. I guess it was kind of cool to see Las Pegasus again, Trixie's dad and Chris Chan, but I'm really digging for stuff to like in this one. But yeah, this one is just really bad, boring, and stupid.
Oh, no way! I just said the same thing, you crazy cunt!
Newbie Dash. If you want a Rainbow Dash torture porn, then this is the episode for you. Dash is finally a Wonderbolt now, which is awesome. However, everyone treats her like shit solely because she's a newbie. I know she made some mistakes in this episode, but all of her teammates are just giant assholes. One problem is that Dash feels like she's regressed from some of the previous episodes. In Wonderbolt's Academy, she wasn't this clumsy and stupid. I get that she wasn't a full member then, but still, I can't buy her messing up and acting like this. The whole her trying to act like all of her friends thing is extremely stupid and it lasts for more than 2 minutes. Her being this stupid in the last act is really out of character for her. And the ending doesn't work because the Wonderbolts were way too mean to her throughout the episode. Like, I know that friends do this and make fun of each other, but this is just too mean-spirited. The lesson for this episode is that it's actually okay to be an asshole. So I guess stick your fingers down your throat and barf up your last drink for this one. I think the concept for this episode is sorta fine and it could have worked, but Dash's clumsiness and stupidity as well as the Wonderbolts being cunts are just way too exaggerated.
Stop posting about Among Us!
Well, that was all the 3 out of 10 episodes, and now it's time to move on to the 4 out of 10s. These next episodes are bad, but there usually isn't anything too offensive about them. Some of them are either boring or have major problems, but there shouldn't be anything too wrong with them. And the worst of them is... Party pooped. This episode isn't that bad, but it fails because of 2 reasons. The message of making people feel at home at your home is fine, but it isn't delivered well here. Pinky learns this when she's traveling across Equestria, but we really only get to see her interact with 2 people during that time. The conductor does one tiny thing and Cherry Jubilee helps her as well, but that's it. After that, Pinky says that she met a lot of people on her way to Yakistan, which is supposed to be a big part of the episode. But it happens so fast, which is why it fails. A whopping 4 minutes of this episode are spent on the Yaks destroying random things in Ponyville, and the riding scene with Jubilee lasts for an entire minute for some reason. So yeah, another problem with this episode is that the pacing is all over the place. Now the other big reason why this episode fails is the Yaks themselves. They're all just assholes for no reason and destroy everything because that's just how they are. Why would anyone want to be friends with them if all they do is yell at you and break everything you own? I will admit that it's pretty funny the first time, but after that it gets old. Also, why does everyone just forgive the Yaks or at least not care that they broke a lot of things in their town and even declared war on them? Hell, the Yaks don't even apologize for being assholes, which is why I really don't like this episode. I like asshole characters, but they have to be punished for their actions. If not, then it just ends up being frustrating. The only decent thing about this episode is Pinky herself. She's been inconsistent after the first couple seasons, but here she's handled fairly well. She's much better in episodes like Party of One and Pinky Pride, but still, she's okay here. There are some good jokes and lines, but then again, even the bad episodes have their funny and good moments. It's not nearly enough to make up for all this episode does wrong.
He made me experience high tide!
Surf and or turf. Another hot take. I did not care for this episode. My main problem with it is that it's really boring since it's extremely predictable and the problem is really stupid too. So Terramar's a hippogriff who travels back and forth from Sequestria and Mount Eris, and for whatever reason this is a problem for him since he doesn't live in one place, I think? Why is that a problem? You've been moving back and forth whenever you want without any issues. The CMC then spends the episode episode trying to decide which place is best for him. It's boring because again, it's really obvious that he's not going to pick one of them. There's no problem to begin with, so this episode just feels really pointless and stupid. Also, Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo get into a fight later and it's really dumb, especially since it gets resolved in like a minute. I guess it's cool to see Mount Eris and Sequestria again, but that's about all this episode has going for it. Castlemania. Yet another hot take, but I didn't care for this episode either, since I mainly found it boring. Everyone goes around Celestia and Luna's old castle for the entire episode, and that's really it. The only reason I'm giving this episode a 4 instead of a 3 is because the design of the castle is pretty great. Pretty much every episode past season 1 looks really good, and this one is no exception. In fact, it's one of the better looking season 4 episodes. But besides that, this episode is just boring. It's not offensive or anything. I can see if people like it, but I personally didn't.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!
Is it me, or does it smell like Updog in here?
Uprooted. It's not easy to follow up after a premiere like the beginning of the end, but even so, this episode is just bad. This is a Student 6 episode, and they're fine, but they just aren't developed enough for me to care for them for an entire episode like this. Maybe if the series had more episodes like She's All Yak before this, then this would be a notably stronger episode, but who knows. Anyway, during the episode, everyone tries to do something nice for the Tree of Harmony, even though it's destroyed, which is dumb. At the end of the episode, the tree comes back but turns into a tree house. It hasn't even been one full episode since the premiere where the tree got destroyed and they're already bringing it back? That's fucking stupid. I wouldn't be so annoyed by this if this happened later in the season, but this is literally the next episode after it got destroyed. Also, that's not even the worst part, because this treehouse doesn't even get used for the remainder of the series. It's in one episode for a few minutes, but that's literally it. So what was the point of bringing back the tree if they weren't going to do anything with it? There's also a 1.5-minute montage of everyone getting signatures to stay at school, which is drawn out and just feels like filler. Overall, this episode is bad, kind of boring, but most importantly, pointless.
I'm Twilightlicious.
Owl's Well That Ends Well. Before Mare-do-Well in season 2, there was Owl's Well That Ends Well in season 1, which a lot of people didn't seem to like, including myself. It's the worst season 1 episode, but it's not that bad. My problem is that this mainly feels like a concept that's been done in other series before. It's kind of boring, especially in the last act, and it's predictable too. Spike has some really bad episodes early on, and yeah, this one isn't good, but it's clearly not his worst. I'm not a fan of early Spike, but he can be entertaining sometimes, and he is during some scenes here. I liked when he put on a hat, mustache, and cape and tried to fuck over Owlicious, but besides that one scene, he's just obnoxious. The reason Spike isn't likable in the early seasons is because he always has bad and selfish intentions. Like in this episode, he's jealous of a stupid owl, so he wants to get rid of it so Twilight and everyone can give him more attention. This is exactly the reason why Spike sucks, but the CMC are great, because even though they make mistakes, they always have good intentions. But yeah, this episode is just stupid, kind of boring, and annoying. Thanks for the memories. I guess this is a hot take, but this episode is just bad. It doesn't really make sense why Dash acts the way she does. She used to be friends with Gilda, and she came and left town for probably months whenever she wanted to. Did Dash throw a hissy fit and try to stop her from leaving? No, so why is Tanks different? The main and biggest problem with this episode is that Tanks isn't dying. He's only hibernating for like 2 or 3 months and then he'll be back, so what's the problem? If this episode really wanted to deal with the concept of loss, then great, but it can't do that unless Tanks is going to die. If he was dying, then this could have been a fantastic episode, but he's not, which is why this episode fails. You can't just write the episode like Tanks is dying and expect me to get emotional because it reminds me of the loss that I've experienced in my own life. That's not how this works, and it annoys me that a lot of people seem to like the episode because of this. Also, Dash acts like an asshole to all of her friends and even becomes becomes an eco-terrorist by destroying part of the Rainbow Factory. Worst of all, she doesn't even get punished for it, so that's great. The last two scenes should be great, but again, Tanks isn't dying, so they both completely miss the mark. Now, as bad and flawed as this episode is, there are some pretty good jokes in it, plus the song is one of the better ones in the series. I can understand why people like this episode, but it's inherently flawed since Tanks isn't dying. Secret of my excess. So apparently people seem to like this episode for some reason. Like all the bad Spike episodes, my problem with it is that Spike is just a selfish asshole, and not only that, but he's a one-dimensional selfish asshole. He turns into nothing but a greedy scumbag, which I know is the point, but it doesn't mean that it's good. The thing that's so irritating about this episode is that if I made one tiny change, this would be notably better. So it's Spike's birthday and he gets presents from the main six, even though he's only used to getting just one from Twilight. Because of this, he starts acting greedy and asking people for presents around town, which I'm actually okay with. I think him turning greedy is fine since he's still a kid, and more importantly, he's getting carried away with receiving gifts. However, shortly after this, Twilight comes and tells him to stop, which he says he will. But then as soon as she walks away, he continues asking for gifts. This one tiny detail is what makes me dislike the episode. It shows how much of a fucking asshole Spike truly is. If Spike listened to Twilight and gave back the things he received, but then got tempted by something else later on, then I would be completely fine with that. Or at the very least, show that Spike is struggling to give back the items he has, but then chooses not to because he's overwhelmed by greed. Either of those alternatives would be so much better than what we got. But no, Spike willingly knows that what he's doing is wrong, which is why he's genuinely not a good person here. Also, Zecora says that all dragons are inherently greedy, so that's really stupid since it ultimately means that Spike can't or at least shouldn't grow up. In the beginning, Rarity also acts out of character by kissing Spike, which is dumb. Not all this episode is shit since there are some things to like. Spike grows into a giant during the last couple minutes, and I'll admit it is entertaining. This episode is also fairly funny and has good jokes in it, but that still doesn't ignore the fact that this episode's writing is shit. Finally, Spike learns not to be a greedy asshole, so take a drink.
I am so thirsty for some goth girls.
Fake it till you make it. One of the problems with this episode is that if Rarity needs someone to watch over her shop, then why does she pick Fluttershy? I know she already asked others. In fact, she basically asked everyone in Ponyville, including the CMC, who are all only children. Actually, the fact that she asked literally everyone makes this even worse, since they all just so happen to be busy. Meanwhile, Fluttershy is the only one who's not. That's pretty unrealistic. Also, if her shop is in Manhattan, then why doesn't she ask Coco to watch it since she lives there? I guess she might be busy too, but the episode never bothers to mention this. Also, Rarity could just close the shop for a couple days, which she refuses to do since it's fashion season and she wants to make money. But the thing is, she'll only be gone for a couple days, I think, not a month, so that's not really a problem. The other and main problem with this episode is that halfway through, Fluttershy turns into an asshole for no reason. She starts shitting on her animal friends and then treats all the customers like shit too, so that's stupid. Now the thing is, I actually enjoyed the first half of this episode since it was pretty fun seeing Fluttershy act out of character. We get to see a new and fun side of Fluttershy, and it also helps that her designs in this episode are great too. But then she starts acting like a dick basket for no reason, and then has a really shitty apology at the end. She says that she's sorry since she was just pretending to be an asshole, which doesn't cut it. So yeah, drink your beer because Fluttershy learned not to be an asshole. Honest Apple. This episode is just dumb and not that entertaining besides a couple jokes. First off, why does Rarity want Applejack of all people to be a judge for a fashion show? She knows Applejack doesn't care for fashion, and Applejack even states this herself. According to Rarity, it's because Applejack is honest and practical, but I still think someone else would have been a much better pick. This episode mainly has Applejack being an ass and annoying everyone who's competing in the fashion show. It's kind of entertaining seeing seeing her be honest about everyone's dresses, but shortly after, it just gets mean-spirited and frustrating. The only good thing about this episode is the scene with Strawberry Sunrise where she tells Applejack that she hates apples. It's pretty funny, but that's all this episode has going for it. It's not offensive or anything, it's just a bad, dumb, and forgettable episode. Also drink, because Applejack learns not to be an asshole.
It's a great pumpkin!
Going to seed. This is another dumb and kind of pointless episode. Apple Bloom wants to catch something called the Great Seedling, but Applejack says it's not real. But then later on she does believe in it again. Her and Apple Bloom try to catch it, but then it turns out to be Big Mac. But then it turns out the thing might be real, so I guess
No one will ever know!
the thing that's frustrating about this episode is that Applejack is sort of in the right here, even though she's portrayed as being in the wrong. This episode's moral is that you're not too old to have fun, which I think is a fine message, but it doesn't work here. It's kind of conflicting with the message of Some Pony to Watch Over Me, which shows that Apple Bloom is mature and old enough to stay home by herself. It's not completely going against that message, but it's difficult to be mature and still believe in something stupid like the Great Seedling. Applejack is right that Apple Bloom should be helping out harvesting apples instead of messing around since she's mature and old enough by this point. But yeah, this is a stupid and kind of irritating episode. Look before you sleep. This episode is pretty stupid. Rarity and Applejack start fighting for no reason, have a sleepover at Twilight's while they continue to fight, and Twilight is somehow too dense to realize that they're fighting. Or actually, she knew they were fighting, but instead of doing something about it, she complains more about how they're ruining her first slumber party. I know this is season 1 Twilight and also only episode 8 of the series, but this is just out of character for her, even for an episode as early as this. Also, I get that Applejack and Rarity have conflicting ideals, but still, the way they start fighting is just really stupid. Applejack wants to help tear down all the loose branches since a storm is coming, but Rarity instead decides to make the branches look nice. Applejack then yells at her because she's wasting her time, which she is, and then they just keep on fighting from there. This episode is kind of slow, but I did find Rarity and Applejack fighting amusing, even if the fight itself still is stupid. I don't know, I found them arguing to be somewhat entertaining, and the episode in general is fairly amusing and funny. But still, in terms of writing, it's bad. Nothing offensive, especially since this is an early season 1 episode, but it's clearly not good.
Penis!
Well, that was all the 4 out of 10 episodes, so now it's time to move on to the 5 out of 10s. These next episodes aren't bad, but also not good either. They're watchable, and there isn't too much wrong with them, but there isn't enough good elements in them for me to say that they're okay and deserve a pass. And the first of them is
You've just picked it up already!
Daring Doubt. Season 9 tried to wrap up loose ends and redeem some characters, but did they really need to redeem the Daring Do villains? That's kinda dumb, and I don't think this was necessary. My main issue with this episode is that this is the 5th Daring Do episode. I didn't care for the last one, I was kind of tired of Daring Do by then anyway. I like that season 9 brought back characters like Quibble Pants and Cheese Sandwich, but they weren't brought back 4 times, plus they're also more likable than the Daring Do characters anyway. Yes, this is a unique episode, it isn't bad, there are good jokes in it, but I really wasn't interested. Plus again, the idea of redeeming all the villains I really don't like. Fluttershy is pretty good in it, it's a watchable episode, but I personally didn't need it.
You can't fire me, I quit.
Daring done. Here we have the 4th Daring Do episode, and by this point I'm kinda tired of her. I like Daring Do and all, but I think they did enough with her character already, and I didn't need to see more of her. Besides me not wanting another episode, this one isn't bad or anything, it's just really whatever and dumb. So Daring Do decides that she's going to quit being Daring Do. She went to one town recently and everyone complained about her since she left a mess or something. It's really stupid and seems out of character for her to want to quit, especially since it's only one town that's complaining. If it was multiple towns that were complaining, and if this was going on for a couple months, then I could buy it, but this isn't cutting it. Also, she says that her books aren't sold in Southern Equestria, but she doesn't explain why that is. Just like with Campfire Tales, I feel like this episode is only here because they needed to explain Somnambula's backstory. It feels like they wrote that and then decided to shoehorn Daring Do in for whatever reason. The one good thing about this episode is the art style during Somnambula's story. It's unique, it looks nice, and I like the design of the Sphinx too. However, that's really it, because the rest of this episode is just mediocre, predictable, and even the last act is kinda lame for Daring Do standards. Equestria Games. This episode is a big mixed bag. It's another Spike episode, and it's one of the better ones up to this point, but it's still just whatever. Honestly, one of my biggest problems doesn't even have to do with the episode itself. It has to do with the fact that this episode comes literally right after Inspiration Manifestation, which was the first solid Spike episode. So to go from that to this is pretty disappointing, although I'm not going to say it's not good solely because of that. This episode just has Spike being really cringy and annoying for around half of it. There's this one part where he thinks he could set things on fire with his mind, which is just... This episode also rips off a joke from the Showstoppers by having Spike sing terribly in front of a crowd. So if you're ripping off a joke from an episode like the Showstoppers, then that's pretty bad. At least him saving everyone at the end was good, since he doesn't make a big deal out of it. Another thing that's kinda cool about this episode is that we finally see the Equestria Games happen. However, it's still disappointing to see in this episode, since this is still a Spike one. That being said, up to this point, this is the second best Spike episode. Spike isn't as dislikable here as he is in other episodes, he's mainly just cringy and annoying. Again, this might be ranked a tiny bit higher if this didn't come right after the best Spike episode up to this point. Games Ponies Play. Having this episode take place at the same time as the previous episode just for sidekicks is interesting, but that's about all this episode has going for it. Miss Harshwinny is a fun character, but she's barely in the episode, which is disappointing. The problem is that this episode is way too predictable. Now, I'm fine with episodes being predictable as long as they're fun, but this one is just mediocre. It's a bit boring, it wasn't that funny, it's forgettable, but it's nothing offensive. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on this one because Just for Sidekicks put a bad taste in my mouth, but either way, this one is just average.
Let's go!
Baby Cakes. This episode is just dumb babies doing dumb things, which isn't bad, but it isn't anything special either. Jokes are whatever, some land, some don't, but none of them are great. There's a song that's god-awful, but I guess it's supposed to be since the babies are crying during it. The one good thing about this episode is that Pinky learns about responsibility on her own, even though Twilight comes and tries to teach it to her. So that's good, I guess, and means this episode could have been worse. However, Pinky learns that just because she's good at playing with babies doesn't mean that she's good at taking care of them. It's way too similar to Stairmaster's lesson. In that episode, Fluttershy learned that just because she's good at taking care of animals doesn't mean she's good at taking care of kids. So yeah, the lesson is sort of reused, there's a lot of dumb baby stuff in it, and overall it's just whatever and forgettable.
I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
Not asking for trouble. It's another Yak episode, and it's better than Party Poop, but not by a whole lot. This episode is heavily carried by its jokes, and the comedy here is actually pretty good. Now, the thing about this episode is that I was actually having a good time watching most of it, but then during the last act, the Yak leader tells Pinky that she's not a Yak anymore because she wants to get her friends to come and help out the Yaks, which is stupid. Pinky then gets her friends to help out the Yaks, and I thought the lesson would just be a carbon copy of Applebuck season, which is that it's okay to ask for help. However, that's not what this episode does, but instead has a really stupid and bad lesson. The lesson is that you're supposed to help people that tell you that they don't need help, even though they do, which is fucking stupid. This is even worse considering the Yak leader treats Pinky like shit. So this episode is teaching you that you should help people that say they don't need your help, especially if they're assholes to you. What a great lesson. I really don't know why the Yak leader couldn't learn not to be an asshole. I don't know why the writers think it's okay for him to be free from learning lessons. He gets to be an asshole and does whatever he wants, which is frustrating. The main reason why this is better than Party Pooped is because it's actually a fun episode up until the last act, and especially last minute. Also, the Yaks, or more specifically Leader, is only an asshole to Pinky here, and not everyone in Ponyville, so there's that too. Rarity takes Manhattan. Spicy hot take, but I didn't care for this episode all that much. My main problem is that the lesson isn't conveyed well, which sucks because it's a really strong message. So everyone goes to Manhattan so Rarity can be in a fashion show. When she gets there, she meets an old friend that turns out to be an asshole and plagiarizes her new dress. After being annoyed by that, she now has to make a bunch of new dresses, so she has her friends help her out. However, she starts treating them like shit because she's still upset over getting plagiarized, I think. She then leaves with the dresses and realizes that she fucked up.
Now you fucked up!
So she apologizes for taking advantage of her friends, which again is a good lesson, but it isn't conveyed well. My issue is that Rarity taking advantage of her friends is so inconsistent. First, she kind of takes advantage of Spike in the beginning by having him carry all of her luggage. Then later on, when she forgets her dresses, her friend sends someone to bring them to her. She doesn't think much of it, but that's because she's in a hurry to go to her fashion show. Also, they weren't even there, so she couldn't thank them even if she wanted to. My problem with these scenarios are that they're way too subtle about Rarity taking advantage of her friends. I think being subtle is good, but this is just too subtle. Plus, it goes from 0 to 100 when she starts treating them like shit a couple minutes later. It's like, what the fuck? Why are you treating your friends like this? They're doing everything they can to help you. I understand that Rarity is stressed and upset about the fashion show, but I just don't buy that she treated her friends this poorly. This is something I'd expect from a season 1 episode, not season 4. Maybe if Rarity slowly and more harmfully took advantage of her friends, then I would like this episode, but it just doesn't work for me. Another thing is that there's a 2-minute song in the beginning and it just feels like filler. There's another one later on that's only 40 seconds, which actually serves a purpose and is also good. I guess it was cool to see Manhattan for once, and Coco is nice. I'm pretty sure this is also where the term hot cocoa came from. The Showstoppers. This is widely considered one of the worst season 1 episodes, and yes, it's the 3rd worst, although it's not that bad. This episode just feels pointless and nothing really happens in it besides the CMC getting their clubhouse. There's a montage with a really good background song in it, but it lasts for 3 minutes. It's clearly filler and gets boring after the first minute. Like, I get it, they can't get their marks, but did we really need to see this for 3 minutes? One thing people seem to hate is the song they sing at the end, but funny enough, that's one of the best parts. It's really stupid and fun, and I like it. But yeah, I like the CMC as much as the next guy, but this is just a really pointless episode, and it doesn't help that there isn't even a lesson here either. This should probably be a bit lower, but I don't mind it that much, especially since this is still a season 1 episode, and it's a fairly fun episode too. Also, it's weird that this comes right after Stairmaster, which was also a CMC episode, and a notably better one too. Finally, what's up with this noise? Well, that's all the 5 out of 10 episodes, so it's now time to move on to the 6 out of 10s. These next episodes are okay, and while far from great, there's still episodes that I'd overall say I enjoyed. I probably wouldn't want to rewatch most of them, but I think they all deserve at least one watch. Friendship is magic. I don't believe this is a hot take, but either way, the first episode isn't that impressive. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it just feels sort of standard, I guess. I will say that this is one of the few 2-parters that's affected by being counted as only one episode. If I were to rank each part separately, I'd say part 1 is a 7 out of 10 and part 2 is a 5 out of 10. The first part does a fine job at introducing all the characters, and there's nothing really wrong with it. There's nothing great about it, but I'm willing to give it some slack since it is the very first episode. Part 2, however, just feels like it's trying to fill in a quota. Everyone needs to show off what their element is, and overall it's just very whatever and straightforward. There's also Applejack's scene, which is pretty dumb. She tells Twilight that she should trust her and let go of her hoof because she'll be okay. Why are you being so unclear about this? Just tell her that Dash and Fluttershy are going to catch her. Is that so hard to do? Nightmare Moon is the villain, and she's very generic and forgettable. Her design is cool, but that's about it. My main problem with part 2 is that it shows off who all the main 6 are, but it does it in a very bland and formulaic way. I wouldn't have this much of a problem with it, but the literal next episode, the Ticketmaster, does this, but in a much better and fun way. But yeah, the very first episode is just alright. Nothing great, but nothing bad.
Like a family tradition! mission. Except they're not allowed to leave.
Apple family reunion. Ew, Babseed killer. It's nice to see other Apple family members, except for Babs, but besides her, this episode is overall just really fine. It's kind of annoying to see Applejack bother everyone for like a third of the episode, but she has good intentions, so I'm sort of okay with it. Also, she does annoy Babs, so that's always good. One weird thing about this episode is that it really isn't funny. It's not painfully unfunny, I just don't think there's many jokes in here that land, and the ones that don't land aren't horribly unfunny or anything. There's nothing bad with this episode, the ending is nice, but overall it's just fine. Also, there's a song too. Wait, what did they say? Excuse me? Are they singing Racist Barn? What the fuck? You're not perfect. Marks for effort. Just like a lot of season 8 episodes, this one is weird, but for different reasons. This feels like two separate episodes thrown into one. The first half has the CMC trying to attend Twilight School, but then the second has him tutoring Cozy Glow. I get that they realize wanting to help others learn about friendship is what they truly wanted, but it's pretty jarring going from the first half to this. You can start the episode at the second act and it actually works out somewhat well. Honestly, the first act feels like filler. It's stupid and kinda bad. I was expecting this episode to be shit when I first started watching it, but then once Cozy Glow made her appearance, then the episode got good. Also, speaking of Cozy Glow, she comes out of nowhere. She's not in the first act at all, and she just appears outside the CMC's clubhouse. That's really weird. You'd think she'd be introduced at the start of the episode, but I guess not. Anyway, Cozy Glow is an asshole, and I really like her. Twilight being mad at the CMC later on actually makes sense, or is at least believable. The ending has them get diplomas for whatever reason, which is really stupid since they never attended the school, so why are they graduating? Overall, the first act is kinda poopy and the last couple minutes are kinda dumb, but at least half of it is pretty fun, especially since this episode does introduce Cozy Glow.
Don't show my pretty pink princess.
Princess Spike. So apparently this is a hot take, but I actually think this episode is fine and don't get why so many people seem to dislike it. It's far from great and clearly not as good as some other Spike episodes, but it's still one of the better ones. When this episode came out, there was only one good Spike episode, which was Inspiration Manifestation. So in comparison to every other Spike episode, this one was easily one of the best. The main reason this episode works where others fail is because Spike isn't completely unlikable here. He has good intentions of helping Twilight and also believes that he's helping people with their problems, or at least at first he does. Obviously, later on he doesn't do this for Twilight and everyone else, but instead he does it for himself.
I did it for me.
But he's still a kid, it's in character for him, and he mainly does this since he's disappointed that all the princesses get more attention than he does. Spike is fine here, and again, at least had good intentions from the start. This is why this episode works, whereas Just for Sidekicks fails. The episode is pretty predictable, but overall I think it's fine. Rainbow Falls. I really don't have much to say about this one. It's an okay Dash episode. It's far from her best, but it's still fairly fun. The first act is sorta whatever, but it picked up in the second half. Also, Bulk Biceps and Derpy are in it, so that's why I like it more than I probably should.
Ding, fries it done. Ding, fries it done.
A heartwarming tale. Hot take, but this episode is just okay. It's better than Heartwarming Eve, but then again, 90% of the show is, so that's not saying much. My main problem with this episode is that it's just a Christmas Carol and nothing else. I'm obviously fine with the series doing parodies, but the thing is, this episode isn't great at being a parody. The episode wasn't really funny besides a couple jokes, and the songs were overall just okay. It's kind of charming to see the characters play out a Christmas Carol, but it's nothing great. Another reason why I'm not thrilled with this episode is because this came out not even a full season after Hearthbreakers. That was a much better Christmas episode, and one of the reasons was because of how unique it was. So going from that to a typical Christmas Carol parody is sort of underwhelming. But even if you ignore that, this episode is still just fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think there's anything great about it either.
He was so ugly that everyone died.
Campfire Tales. Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Rarity sit around and tell 3 stories about some of Equestria's finest heroes. All of them are fine. There's nothing nothing wrong with them, I just didn't think they were anything special. I feel like this episode is only here because they needed to introduce all these characters for the season finale, so in a way this feels forced, I guess. The only other thing worth mentioning is that Miss Main helps out her friend even though she was an asshole, which is really stupid.
Mysterious mysteries of strange mystery.
Rarity investigates. This episode takes place shortly after Canterlot Boutique, which is interesting, and the black and white scenes also look cool, but besides that, it's just okay. It's kinda slow in the beginning, but the setup is important, so I'm fine with it. My main issue is that it's obvious that Windriser did it, so if the mystery isn't really a mystery, then that's kind of a problem. Not great, but still okay. Spice up your life. Rarity and Pinky help at a restaurant in Canterlot, and it's fairly entertaining. The character designs as well as the shop were unique, although I didn't care for the song at all. The episode is predictable, except for the end where Zesty didn't approve of the food, which caught me off guard. Also, it's weird that we got another Pinky and Rarity episode, even though we just got one not even 10 episodes before this.
Oh, baby, a triple!
A flurry of emotions. A Twilight and Flurry Heart episode sounds like a good idea, but in execution, this one is just alright. It's fairly entertaining, although it is predictable and repetitive. Both the A plot of Twilight and the B plot of Shining Armor and Cadence were fine, so overall it's just a very decent episode.
We say let it grow.
Princess Twilight Sparkle. Time for another spicy hot take, but the season 4 premiere is just okay. Honestly, it's not that much better than the series premiere. There are some cool things in here, such as seeing Celestia fight Luna, as well as the two of them turning Discord to stone.
Taste the rainbow, motherfucker!
The Tree of Harmony is an interesting idea and is very important later in the series. There's also the Saf meme, which is fucking hilarious and stupid. The only great and by far best part of the episode has to be Discord. He's usually great in the series, but this is definitely one of his strongest appearances. Without him, this would be mediocre, and honestly would even go as far as to give it a 5 out of 10. Sometimes the episode can be a bit too slow and even boring at times, so I'd say that Discord kind of saved this episode. This is especially so since this is the first two-parter that doesn't have a villain. It has an antagonist, which is the Tree of Harmony itself, but it's just a bunch of vines, so that's kinda lame. Also, there's this one part where Applejack and everyone tell Twilight to go back to Ponyville since she can't control her wings, which is really stupid. It also doesn't help that when she does go back, she leaves to go back into the forest like a minute later. So that's dumb, pointless, and forced. But overall, this is a very disappointing premiere that gets hard carried by Discord. School days. It's kinda weird to watch this episode since you need to watch the movie before this in order to understand what's going on. But besides that, this is another just okay yet disappointing premiere. Twilight opens up a friendship school, which is interesting, and we get introduced to the new Student 6, which aren't the best additions to the series. I don't care for them that much in this episode since they're all together and they aren't able to show off what makes them unique and appealing. Yona was fun, but she's the only exception. I enjoyed the song and liked how low stakes this episode was, even though a war on Equestria technically could have happened in it. The villain, or I guess antagonist Chancellor Nace, is also one of the weakest villains in the series. He's just a typical asshole school leader member and he's pretty forgettable. P-E-D-O. On your marks. Obviously, after finally getting their marks, this episode had to happen. What happens now that they have their marks? Well, they go and help others get their marks or show them what their marks mean. It's not a great episode by any means, but it's overall okay, even if there is one big problem with it. That being Apple Bloom not knowing what she would like to do for fun. Besides wanting to get her cutie mark and helping out her family on the farm, she likes making potions with Sakura, which we even see her do in the episode. Why doesn't she just do that for a couple hours instead of doing things she doesn't want to do? That's fucking dumb. I understand it's not something new, but this just seems forced and stupid. The only other thing worth noting is the scene where Bulk Biceps is in the CMC's clubhouse. When I saw this, I almost had an aneurysm. Either 1 or 2 nights before I saw this episode, I was bored and looked up Bulk Biceps on Rule 34. When I did, I found a set of images of him fucking mocking the CMC in their clubhouse and thought it was funny because I have a sick sense of humor. But then when I saw this episode, I realized that those images were all based off this episode, which is why I lost my shit. But besides that, this episode could have been a lot better, but it's still fine.
Afro circus, Afro circus.
Appaloosa's Most Wanted.
I want to dress up like a clown and have sex with children and kill them.
Apparently, people don't seem to like this episode. It's far from great, but overall it's fine, even though it's not the most fun or interesting CMC episode. I like the idea of someone not knowing what their mark means, so that's something new. It was nice seeing Troubleshoes join the rodeo at the end and realize that his clumsiness can be used to make people laugh. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's alright. I could see if people don't like it, but I thought it was fine.
You got a friend in me.
The End and Friend. Okay, I'll admit, this episode is kind of dumb and is most likely a guilty pleasure of mine. I know it's not great or even that good, but still, I had fun with it. The concept seems really stupid, and it is, don't get me wrong, but I get what they were going for. Rarity and Dash are not a couple, but we never really see them together that often. We've seen them both with other characters like Pinky and Applejack before, but barely with each other. They both have very different hobbies and ideals, so it's weird that they're friends even though they don't have much in common. Although that's entirely what the point of the episode is. Sure, some of the dialogue and actions are over the top and forced, but it's nothing that feels outright bad, just not great. The last act is predictable and kind of slow, but overall I thought this episode was fine. I can see people not liking this one, but I had fun with it. I'll admit that it's probably a guilty pleasure of mine for some reason.
No one will ever know!
The one where Pinkie Pie knows. Here we have a Pinkie Pie torture porn, where Pinkie needs to keep the secret of Shining Armor and Cadence having a baby. My main issue with it is the pacing, and I think this could have been solid if it was only 11 minutes long. The first two acts are the exact same thing. I know that's the whole point of the episode, and I'm still fine with it, but it's just way too slow and basic for a full 22-minute episode. The last act is fun, and the ending is satisfying, but I don't think it was worth the wait. There's just too much fluff and filler here to call this one good.
Soccer is against God.
Fuckball season. I like how Pinky and Fluttershy are just better than Dash and Applejack solely because they like having fun. I'm assuming Dash and Applejack practice buckball occasionally, so the fact that Pinky and Fluttershy are just better at the game than them is funny. All 4, or actually 5 characters are handled pretty well here. For whatever reason, Snails is here and he's much more tolerable than he's been in previous episodes. Dash and Applejack being tough on Fluttershy and Pinky makes sense, and they both had good intentions, so I don't have a problem with this. They were only being tough since that's what motivates themselves to do better. I think this episode could have easily sucked if Dash and Applejack got jealous of Pinky and Fluttershy, so I'm glad that they didn't go that route. Fluttershy and Pinky are also handled really well too, although mainly Pinky. They're both nervous about playing in an official game since they don't want to let Ponyville down if they lose. This is typical to see from Fluttershy, but it's rare and surprising to see from Pinky. Normally, Pinky doesn't get scared or nervous about much, so it's nice to see her actually give a shit about something for once. My only problem is that its comedy is weak and it's predictable, but those are only minor complaints. Also, some of the facial expressions in this episode are weird. She talks to Angel. Season 9 brought back some side characters like Garble and tried to redeem them. Sometimes it worked, but sometimes it didn't, like with the Daring Do villains. This time the series is trying to redeem Angel, and as much as I hate him, I have to admit that this episode is decent. While I don't forgive Angel for being a massive cunt throughout the entire series, he at least matures in this episode. But for me, I think it's just too little too late. I hate him so much that they need to do a lot more in order for me to care about him. I enjoyed seeing Fluttershy and Angel switch bodies, and Fluttershy herself was also written well here. But besides that, Angel learned that he shouldn't be an asshole, so take a sip, or actually fuck it, take a whole shot of something since Angel learned it. PPOV, Pony Point of View. Not the most original idea, but it's still decently entertaining. Applejack, Rarity, and Pinky go on a trip, and each of them blame each other for why the trip ended up sucking. It's fun seeing everyone's different perspectives, especially Pinky's, although this does come at a cost. I know they're all arguing here and are mad at each other, but each of them feels a bit regressed. They don't feel out of character, they just feel more like they did earlier in the series. Also, Applejack is known for being honest, so shouldn't she tell the truth here? That's kinda dumb.
Magic Man!
Boastbusters. I really want to say this episode is good, but there's some big problems with it. My main issue is that Trixie may be a liar and also an asshole, but she really didn't do anything too wrong. She's a show-off, but she's performing her show to a crowd that was interested in and enjoyed her show. Yes, she is an asshole, but she's not necessarily harming anyone. People like seeing her perform, so if the main six didn't like her performance, then they could have just left. The same goes for anyone else who didn't like Trixie or her show. Also, I'm fine with Twilight not wanting to use her magic because she thinks she'll show off like Trixie. But the thing is, Applejack and Dash pretty much tell her that she can, so her still not wanting to is kind of dumb. Also, even though Trixie is an asshole, she at least does try to stop the Ursa Minor, so she's not a bad person. Again, she's just an asshole. Applejack then tells Twilight that magic is a part of who she is, which is why everyone is fine with her and not Trixie. But that doesn't make sense. Magic is also a big part of who Trixie is since she's a performer, so this line doesn't work. This is also the first episode that introduces Snips and Snails, who are both very minor and forgettable characters in the show. I don't mind them here. They can be a bit annoying, but I don't hate them like other people seem to. The lesson is fine, but I think the episode is too messy for it to convey well. Also, last but not least, there's Trixie, who's the entire reason why I like this episode despite its major problems. She's a cocky, loudmouth asshole. She's funny, entertaining, and one of the best side characters in the show. All bottled up. I love Trixie as much as the next guy, but even so, she acts a bit too unlikable in this episode. She's in character, but still, she just acts a bit too carefree and shitty for my liking. Also, it's not really her fault since Starlight isn't showing her that she's angry with her, so there is a reason for her to act the way that she does. There's also a B-plot of Twilight and everyone outside of Ponyville, which is completely pointless and unrelated to Starlight and Trixie. It takes up a third of the episode, and I don't know why it's here. However, I did like the song, especially since wasting time singing it prevents them from beating a record they wanted to beat. Also, the one dude from Linus Tech Tips is in here for some reason.
A group of griffins set the record for the fastest escape. It only took them an hour.
Not a flying toy.
Flight to the finish. Here's another hot take, but I think this episode is just okay. The message is strong and the song is good, but I don't know. I just had an okay time watching it. The only complaint I have is that Apple Bloom acts like an asshole towards Scootaloo at the train station, and it's kind of stupid and out of character for her. Besides its message, the only other great thing about this episode is Rainbow Dash. She gets to show off one of her best traits, which is acting as Scootaloo's older sister. But that's really all I have to say for this one. I get if people love it, but I think it's just alright.
Wow, what an asshole.
Griffin the Brush Off. My main problem with this episode is that it feels like a concept that's been done in plenty of other shows. That being said, it's still fine, and there really isn't anything wrong with it. Twilight not believing Pinkie about Gilda makes sense because this is only episode 5. She hasn't known Pinkie for long and thinks she's imagining things. One thing that is genuinely really good about this episode is that at one point Pinkie tries to convince herself that Gilda actually isn't an asshole. Usually in this type of episode, the main character would continually try to prove that the other one is an ass. They almost never second guess the actions they're taking, so that's something actually new and different here. I like that Pinkie comes up with and fools Gilda entirely on her own. Some nitpicks I have are that the episode isn't really that funny besides a couple good ones here and there. There's this one joke where Pinkie calls Fluttershy her aunt and then Fluttershy gets angry for some reason. That seems very out of character for her, especially since this is one of the first episodes, but I find it really funny, so I don't care. Also, this is kind of a dumb complaint, but some of the ponies that saw Gilda yelling at Fluttershy also show up to her party. So why doesn't any of them tell Dash or anyone else there that Gilda's an ass? I understand season 1's animation and most likely budget was limited, but this is still technically a problem with the episode. But yeah, besides some problems, this one is fine. I feel like the only reason some people hate this episode is because of Gilda. Like, she's not supposed to be likable, she's supposed to be a shithead. That's the whole point of the episode.
When in doubt,
pinky out.
Sweet and elite. Although this isn't nearly as good as the last two rarity episodes, it's still okay. It's nice to see Canterlot again since we only got to see it once last season. The lesson and song are both good, but my issue with the episode is that it just feels like a concept that's been done in other shows. It's predictable as well, but overall the episode is fairly fun.
Reagan smash.
Power ponies. This episode is very weird. It's unique, but it's just very weird and confusing as to why it exists. It doesn't feel like an MLP episode at all, which is both good and bad, I guess. It just feels like the writers watched the comic book episodes from Fairly Odd Parents and said, fuck it, let's do that but with ponies. I was mainly just confused while watching the first act, but once I got used to seeing the cast be superheroes, I started enjoying myself. All the designs are great and overall it's a fun episode, although again, very bizarre. Maybe if I were to rewatch it, it'd jump to a 7 instead of a 6, but for now I feel more comfortable keeping it at a high 6 out of 10.
What the fuck?
My spider sense is tingling.
Feeling pinky keen. Definitely a fun episode with some really good jokes. However, I can't quite call this episode good. The one and only problem with this episode is the lesson, which is really stupid. The lesson is shit happens and some things just don't make sense, which is dumb, especially since this is a show aimed at kids. If the lesson wasn't so bad, then I could easily give this a 7 or maybe even a light 8 out of 10, but it's just so poor that I can't. Even though the lesson is garbage, it's still a Twilight torture porn that's pretty entertaining. Well, that was all the 6 out of 10s, so now it's time to move on to the 7 out of 10s. These next ones are a mix of good and even solid episodes. There might be some great things in them, along with some problems as well. However, there's still good episodes that I wouldn't mind watching again.
Like you could, G.
It isn't the main thing about you. This episode has some pacing issues. It takes a full 3 minutes until the intro starts, and the first act is a bit too slow for my liking. That being said, once the second act starts, it's overall a fun episode. It's entertaining seeing Rarity be stressed out. The last couple minutes are really damn good, and Rarity's design at the end is also great. A health of information. Unlike Campfire Tales and Daring Done, this doesn't feel like an episode that was made just for the finale. When you stop and think about it, this is a surprisingly dark episode since Ikora would have died if Fluttershy didn't save her. I also don't get how or why Fluttershy got swamp fever. She just gets it in the episode, and I guess we're supposed to think she got it from not taking care of herself well. If so, that's kinda dumb and doesn't make sense since Ikora got it from a flower. The lesson of the episode is to take care of yourself, which is obviously a good message. I just think it's really dumb and forced to have Fluttershy get swamp fever when it's never explained how she got it. They could have just had Fluttershy pass out from sleep exhaustion, and that would have worked so much better than this.
Bond. James Bond.
Uncommon Bond. Sunburst is kind of an asshole in this episode. I get that he's excited about seeing Ponyville and becoming friends with new people, but why is he more focused on them instead of Starlight? It's not a huge problem, but it's kind of annoying at times. The ending was really good, but besides that, it's just a good one.
I am the Glob Glow Gab Galab.
The point of no return. I love the callback to the very first episode. The wife Derpy Hooves is here, and even Chris Chan makes a cameo as well. It's a very predictable but still fun episode. The lesson is good, but also kind of weird. It's saying that it's okay not to be perfect, which is completely fine and obviously a good lesson. However, it's also saying that you should make mistakes and try new things. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about claiming that making mistakes is good, but I get that it's okay to make them. Also, the other lesson is that you shouldn't return your library books on time.
Disappointment is a present too.
The Heartswarming Club. Another Christmas episode, and although it's not as good as Hearthbreakers or Best Gift Ever, it's still good and better than the Heartswarming Tale. Just like Hearthbreakers, I like how unique and different this one is. Everyone shares what their culture does for the holidays, and it's fun seeing how different they all are. By this episode, I wasn't really a fan of the Student 6 besides Iona, but this episode made me care for them a tiny bit more, although not by a lot. I was genuinely surprised to find out that Gallus was the one that caused the mess. I thought for for sure Cozy Glow would be the culprit, but I was wrong. So yeah, this is one of the rare times where I was actually surprised by the ending of an episode. Unfortunately, because I believe none of the students were to blame, this made Twilight and Dash kind of unlikable here. Also, why would Twilight go as far as to not send them all home for the holidays? That's fucking stupid, and I don't even know if she has the authority to do that in the first place. Wouldn't all of their parents complain that their children aren't coming home? Besides that, this is still a good episode, but I don't think this will be a traditional special that I revisit every year.
What's it like in New York City?
Made in Manhattan. I don't understand why we got 3 Rarity episodes in a row, but okay. It's nice to see Hot Cocoa again. It's satisfying seeing all of Applejack and Rarity's efforts pay off in the end, and that's about it.
Dear pesky plumbers.
Steamy.
Sweet and smoky. Here we have another Season 9 redemption episode, and this time it's Garble the Asshole Dragon. I don't know why this is an episode, but okay, I guess. I enjoy Garble. He's just a one-dimensional stupid asshole, so I'm kind of mixed about him getting redeemed. On one hand, I think it's really funny that all this time he's just being a dick so others can like him. But at the same time, I kinda liked him before because he was just a typical douchebag that hated ponies since they're cute and girly. He still is an ass for a fair amount of the episode, so there is fun to be had with him. Plus, he saves the day by making everyone laugh at him, which is funny.
Who wants chowder?
Schmolder also gets screen time that isn't just with the rest of the Student 6, so that's good too. Garble learns that he should be himself and that he shouldn't be an asshole, so take your shot or chug your beer now.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
The Cutie Pox. A cool concept for an episode, although nothing great. I think it's dumb how Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle just let Apple Bloom walk away depressed into the forest by herself. Maybe it was a Logan Paul reference? Besides Season 1, the art and animation in the show was usually great, but for some reason, some of the characters look off model here, especially in the beginning. There's also a big Lebowski reference, which was funny too.
You want to cook crystal meth?
The Crystaling. A good but still underwhelming premiere. It's a great idea to have Starlight get back together with Sunburst, and it's easily the best part of the episode. The problem is that there's a lot of build-up, or at least not a lot happens until the second half of part 1. Applejack, Dash, and Fluttershy stalling, while short, still feels like filler and is easily the worst part of the episode. The Starlight scenes are great, but everything else is just okay.
And are you going to love it?
Or are you going to list it?
Castle, Sweet Castle. This is a concept for an episode that makes a lot of sense. After Tyrek blew up Twilight's house, it only makes sense that she'd feel homesick and not be used to living in a giant castle. Not much really happens in it, but that's sort of the point. The ending is great, but overall it's just a good episode. The times they are a changeling. This is sort of just a much worse bridal gossip, even though it's still a good episode. It's cool to see a changeling again, especially one that isn't evil. The ending is nice, but again, this is literally just bridal gossip, but not as good. There's a Spike song, and it's as bad as you'd think it is. Also, Spike not saying anything when Thorax gets discovered to be a changeling was obnoxious.
9. 11.
Student Council. The first half is just alright. It's mainly slow and kind of annoying. Once the second act starts, the episode gets a lot better and is when it gets good. The best part of the episode has to be Mudbriar. He's great and I wish we got to see more of him in the show. Also, him turning to stone is hilarious.
It's Morbin time.
Twilight Time. A fun CMC episode. Not their best, but still a good one. Twilight Time is a neat idea. The restaurant scene is pretty funny, and that's really it.
It was so good when Iron Liz was there, the great Iron Liz.
Once Upon a Zeppelin. Another Twilight torture porn. It's good, it's fun, and it's funny. It has Iron Will in it, who jumps off the ship at the end, and it even has Chris Chan too. Everyone felt in character, especially Twilight, and yeah, it's a good episode. For Whom the Sweetie Belle Tolls. The first act is pretty slow, but the rest of the episode makes up for it. It makes sense that Sweetie Belle would be angry with Rarity. She put so much effort into her play only to get overshadowed by Rarity's talent. Seeing Sweetie Belle realize that she fucked up and fixing her mistakes was also pretty satisfying too. It was cool to see Luna again, and overall it's a good episode. I might not like it as much as others, but I understand if people think this is one of the better ones.
The problem is I don't see any saddle. I mean, this is
is the saddle.
The Saddle Row Review. This episode has a very distinct feel to it by having everyone be interviewed about their time opening up Rarity's new shop. I enjoyed that Rarity opening up a new shop was hinted at earlier in the season as well. Apparently a lot of people love this episode, but I'm not one of them. It's good, but I don't think it's anything great.
I'd like to be a tree.
Over a Barrel. It's cool to see more places in Equestria that isn't Ponyville. The train scene was good, and Fluttershy wanting to be a tree is the best part of the episode.
I'd like to be a
pickle.
I like how the battle against the buffaloes ends because they realize how good apple pie is. That's dumb and funny. Also, it's weird that the buffalo stopped appearing in the show after this. This is the only episode they're in, and I believe they're never mentioned again. It's never explained why. I think it has something to do with racism or something? I don't fucking know. Finally, this is the first episode where someone, or more specifically Dash, gets a wing boner, so that's epic.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on!
Mystery on the Friendship Express. Nearly the entire episode takes place on a train, so that's unique. The mystery is actually well done, and I did not expect Rarity, Dash, and Fluttershy of all people to eat the cake. This is a better mystery episode than Rarity Investigates, which probably isn't the most popular opinion, but I don't care. Family Appreciation Day.
If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight. Sun Tzu said that, and I'd say he knows a little more about fighting than you do, pal, because he invented it.
A good Apple Bloom and Granny Smith episode. It's funny and the lesson is good. That's really it. It's good and I liked it.
I like pyrotechnics.
The Washouts. This episode starts off by referencing the beginning of Mare Duel for some reason, so I thought this was going to be a pretty shit episode. But then it immediately does something interesting by having Scootaloo start a different fan club of a new extreme group called the Washouts, and the leader of that group just so happens to be Lightning Dust, who doesn't like Rainbow Dash, which is also interesting. Although it is pretty predictable, it still makes for a fun Scootaloo and Dash episode. Most importantly though was that Dash is very well written here. She's likable, isn't an asshole, and we even get to see her act as Scootaloo's older sister. This is especially nice since she's been very inconsistent and has gotten some pretty shitty episodes after the first couple seasons. The ending is a bit rushed, but it's funny, so I don't mind it.
I'm the map, I'm the map.
The Parent Map. A very strange episode where Starlight and Sunburst have to solve their relationship problems with their own parents. I don't really have much to say about this one. It was funny, entertaining, weird, and overall solid. To Change a Changeling. Another Trixie and Starlight episode, and it's another good one. They teach Thorax's brother Pharynx not to be an asshole, even though he's funny and also racist. And no, I'm not joking. He literally makes another changeling do blackface, so that's cool. One great thing about this episode is that Starlight actually decides to give up on Pharynx, which helps distinguish her from Twilight. But yeah, as always, Starlight and Trixie work well together. The episode is predictable, but still fun.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Marks and Recreation. A great concept for an episode that is also well executed. Just because you get your cutie mark doesn't mean that defines who you are. That also doesn't mean you're stuck doing that one thing for the rest of your life. It's interesting seeing someone that doesn't want their mark for once. I was pretty surprised that Rumble didn't get his mark at the end. I thought for sure he would. The only thing that's not good about the episode is the song. It's not awful, but it's kinda bad, especially since even the weaker songs are just forgettable at worst.
I'm Batman.
Bats. A very weird episode where Fluttershy turns into a bat. Flutterbat looks cool and is the best part of the episode, although I wish we got to see more of her. Instead, we get a bizarre and shitty 2-minute song that feels like filler. It's kinda slow in the beginning, but overall it's fun. This episode is also Meriwether Williams' second and last good episode she wrote for the show. It's surprising that she wrote 2 good episodes at all, considering her track record. For those who don't know, she wrote Spike at Your Service, Putting Your Hoof Down, Dragon Quest, Mysterious Mare Duel, and Hearthwarming Eve, all of which are terrible and some of the worst episodes in the show. So yeah, congratulations Williams, you made 2 good episodes and it only took you 5 times to get it right.
My name is
Joseph.
A friend indeed. Smile is great and is the best part of the episode. It's pretty long compared to a lot of songs in the show, but again, it's one of the better ones, so I don't mind. Seeing Pinky try to cheer up Cranky for the entire episode is entertaining, and it's satisfying to see her finally make him smile at the end. Also, the use of foreshadowing in this episode is very well done. Pinky's conversation with Matilda doesn't seem like it'll be important, but it turns out that it actually is. This is honestly one of the rare times where I couldn't tell how the episode was going to end. But yeah, great song and overall a fun episode.
I like turtles.
May the best pet win. Very predictable, simple, fun, and also has a solid song too. Dash isn't at her best here, but I still enjoyed her, plus she's been much worse in other episodes. A Trivial Pursuit. This episode is really fun, but also has some notable issues. First off, this is the third time the series has used a lesson of competition isn't everything, so that's a bit annoying. That being said, unlike a compete clause, this episode is fun and also doesn't reuse a lesson on the same characters. My other problem is that this is season 9 and Twilight feels out of character here. This is especially an issue since Twilight was the one to teach this lesson to Applejack and Dash all the way back in season 1. But even though this episode has some notable flaws, I can get over them since, like I said, this episode is really fun. The jokes land and this probably has the best expressions in the entire show. I'm sure the artists and animators had a field day with this one. Scaremaster. Season 5 took concepts from previous seasons and did something new and different with them, and one of them was Nightmare Night. This year, Fluttershy tries to face her fears and have fun during Nightmare Night with everyone. However, she ends up sucking at it and ends up being really cringy too. There's this one scene where she has cardboard cutouts of anime characters as ponies, and it really pissed me off, so I ended up punching my couch out of anger. The last act is really good, but the ending itself is what makes this episode solid. Even though Fluttershy has gotten over her fear of Nightmare Night, she still won't do it again because she doesn't enjoy it. A lesson that it's okay for others not to enjoy everything you enjoy is great and is one of the better lessons in the show. She's all yak. I don't know why this took so long, but we finally get an episode that centers around just one of the student 6, and thankfully it's the best of them too. Yona is really fun, the song is solid, it's very predictable, but like always, if it's fun, I don't care, and it is. My only problem is that the lesson is too similar to Simple Ways, and that you shouldn't change yourself in order to impress others. This is also pretty bad once you think about it, since Rarity herself learned this lesson and is making the same mistake again, but with Yona, so that's really stupid, but honestly, I didn't realize this until after I watched the episode. It's still a problem, and it does bother me, but the episode itself is still fun enough where this doesn't ruin it. Hooffields and McColts. Twilight and Fluttershy have to stop a fight between two redneck families. It's very simple, it's not the most original concept either, but it's still a pretty fun episode. I know all the rednecks are pretty generic, but I like their voices and accents, so maybe that's why I like this one more than I should. The only thing that doesn't make sense is that the animals tell Fluttershy that both families have been fighting each other for decades now. How would these animals still be alive if the fight's been going on for that long? I guess their relatives passed down the story for a couple generations, so I guess it's not that far-fetched. Either way, this is still a fun and silly one.
The One Piece is real!
Daring Don't. It's a bit weird to find out that Daring Do and everyone else in the books are real and aren't fictional characters, but it's not too out of left field. Dash can be a bit annoying, but it's in character for her since she's meeting one of her idols. The lesson is about trusting others, but it mainly feels like Daring Do is too stubborn to ask for help from Dash and everyone. Because of this, the lesson just feels like a rehash of Applebuck season. I'm fine with it though, since a lot of this episode is pretty fun. On the Road to Friendship. Here we have another Trixie and Starlight episode where they go on a road trip together. I love how they say they aren't going to sing, but then immediately sing anyway, plus the song is really good too. I mainly like how relatable this episode is since trips can go down the shitter.
Now I know how to color bowl of chicken?
Stairmaster. This is the first CMC episode, and it's pretty fun. My only gripe is that Fluttershy saving the CMC is just Dragonshy again, which is kind of dumb, but nothing offensive. I know it's not exactly the same, but it's still similar enough. But yeah, this is a pretty fun episode and one of the better CMC episodes.
Mega faggot.
Daddy likes me.
Parental guidance. Rainbow Dash's parents are fun, and I mean really fun. I'm not angry at Rainbow Dash for yelling at her parents. It makes sense, plus she realizes that she's wrong for doing so immediately after. But yeah, putting Scootaloo and Dash's crazy parents together is a lot of fun.
Timmy's dead. Destroy
John C.
Every little thing she does. A fun Starlight episode. Seeing everyone being controlled was funny, although seeing Starlight and Fluttershy putting the cobwebs back up really pisses me off. I hate spiders, and cobwebs are stupid. Why are they putting them back up? Also, this is a really dumb nitpick, and I'm not holding this against the episode, but I'm still going to bring this up. So the spell Starlight casts on everyone prevents them from doing literally anything unless she tells them to do something. So wouldn't that technically mean that all of them wouldn't be breathing since she didn't tell them to breathe? In the episode, they do blink, so I guess they still do everything they need to in order to survive. Either way, it's dumb, I know, but I just wanted to mention it.
Rocky Road McDonald's.
A rock hoof and a hard place. This kinda feels like winter wrap-up again in terms of finding your place in life, but I'm fine with it. It's different enough since Rock Hoof is seeing how his friends are adapting to the world as well as him trying to adapt himself. I've been waiting to see more of the legendary Equestria heroes since the season started, and I think this one was worth the wait. The ending was satisfying, and Rock Hoof is a pretty fun character, which is why I don't mind that this episode is a bit similar to Winter Wrap-Up.
I'm a big kid now.
Growing up is hard to do. This episode is so cursed. Seeing the CMC as adults is scary and makes me feel uncomfortable. It's a really fun premise, the song is good, the last act is predictable, but overall, it's good.
It sucks monkey butts like all the fucking rest.
Dungeons and Discords. A Discord Big Mac and Spike episode where they play Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, as weird as this concept is, it manages to work well. It's predictable, but Discord makes this episode fun, so I don't care.
This for that and that for this and these for those and those for these.
Nuts. Ha! Got him!
Trivia. There are 3 plot lines in this episode, and each one is given just the right amount of screen time. Dash and Fluttershy's is the longest and obviously the most interesting of the 3, but the others are still fun too. It's not an original concept and has been seen in other cartoons, but it still works here. Dash giving up Fluttershy makes sense. It doesn't feel forced, especially since she immediately realizes that she messed up. But yeah, fun episode, not much to say.
Far away.
Celestial Advice. Very bizarre that this is the only premiere that isn't a 2-parter, but it's still a solid episode. It's fun to see Celestia be nervous and worried about where she wanted to send Twilight. We barely get to see the side of her in the show. The ending is easily the best part of the episode. I like that Starlight tells Twilight that she doesn't want to leave since she isn't ready yet. My only nitpick is that about a fourth of the episode has Twilight wondering where to send Starlight. It's a fun scene, but it takes up a bit too much time and feels repetitive.
You're very godparents!
The Last Crusade. After 200 episodes, we finally get to see Scootaloo's parents. Was it worth it? Not really, but it's still a solid episode. It's obvious that Scootaloo isn't going to leave Ponyville, but the episode is fun, and the last couple minutes were great too.
You jerk.
The Mean Six. This episode is pretty underwhelming and disappointing since its concept is great. In execution, it doesn't live up to what it could have been, but I still had a lot of fun with it. I lost my shit during the Chrysalis reveal, and I like seeing the evil Main Six again. However, while I do enjoy them, it's just reusing the same idea from Return of Harmony, except this time with Twilight. Not much actually happens in the episode besides everyone getting into a fight, as well as a Tree of Harmony destroying the evil Main Six, which was cool. I also like that Chrysalis just flies away at the end without anyone even realizing that she did anything. It's a pretty fun episode, although it's also a nothing of an episode. I'm probably rating this higher than I should be, but I really liked it. Swarm of the Century, a solid, fun, and classic Season 1 episode. I like how the parasprites multiply by vomiting out one of them, sorta like Piccolo. My only problem is that Pinky doesn't tell everyone about the parasprites even though she knows how dangerous they are. I get that it's sort of in character for her to just do her own thing and act weird, but it's still dumb. The Crystal Empire. Time for a hot take, but this premiere is overrated. Just like the series premiere, this is one of the few two-parters that gets affected by me rating them as one singular episode. If I were to rank each part separately, part 1 would be a 6 out of 10 and part 2 would be an 8 out of 10. Part 1 is slow when there's a lot of build-up for part 2. And even then, part 2, while pretty good, still isn't nearly as good as the last two parters. One of the reasons is because the villain Sombra is kind of shit and isn't much of a character at all. He's just a plot device and is way too generic and boring to be memorable. He has barely any lines and the only good things about him are his design as well as him being a very threatening antagonist. However, even though he is threatening, we barely see him in the episode. And again, even when he is on screen, he's just a generic and bland character with barely any lines. I know a lot of the villains aren't the most deep or fleshed out characters, but at least we see enough of them in their respective episodes. For example, in A Canterlot Wedding, we see Chrysalis trick the entire kingdom into believing that she's actually Cadence. She gets to sing one of the best songs in the series, she has a giant army of her species, and she plays a huge role in the episode. Obviously, Sombra is important, but he just doesn't get enough screen time or dialogue for me to care for him. Besides that, Twilight sacrificing her own goals for the sake of the kingdom was pretty good, and the Crystal Empire ponies look great as well. The B-plot of everyone distracting all the crystal ponies was fine, but Twilight's plot was a lot more interesting. I think the episode would have been better if it focused a bit more on her instead. So yeah, this premiere is pretty overrated, but it's still solid.
Sometimes I dream about cheese.
Bloom and Gloom. Apple Bloom having nightmares about getting your cutie mark is a great concept that does work, although not as well as it could have. My main problem is that the plot is way too basic and feels stretched out to fill 22 minutes. It's pretty obvious that Apple Bloom was in a dream and having nightmares from the beginning, so I was kinda waiting to see what would happen next. But I had to wait until the last couple minutes where Luna comes in to save the day, or night I guess. Because a large amount of this episode is Apple Bloom having nightmares, it shows how scared she is of getting her mark and losing her friends. There are pros to this, but it just feels like padding to me, honestly. The Apple family nightmare is hilarious and probably my favorite part of the episode. I can understand if people love this episode, but I think it's just good. I love the darker tone it has, but I just wish there is a bit more going on in it.
I got the Louis shoes dirty, goddamn!
A horseshoe in. As the series is about to finish, Twilight prepares to take over for Celestia, so that means Starlight gets to take over the school for her. She also wants a vice principal, and obviously Trixie wants the spot because of course she does. Both Trixie and Starlight are well written here, and none of their actions feel forced or annoying. We also see some side characters like Big Mac, Octavia, and Dr. Hooves for some reason, and they even talk too, which is weird. The ending and lesson in this one is pretty damn good too. Meltdown. It's like someone watched Secret of My Excess, realized it was shit, and decided to do the episode again, but this time make it good. I'm really glad they redid this concept since I think it's a really important one, especially since the lesson in that episode was so awful. It's cool to see Spike get wings, so I now hope that he eventually gets the surgery. My only complaint is that while I like that Spike has wings now, his design is still the exact same. His personality isn't any different, so he literally just has wings and nothing else about him has changed. Also, just like a lot of season 8 episodes, this one is on the weirder side. Spike has acne and also burps a lot too, so this is definitely a fetish episode for some people.
Are you threatening me?
Triple threat. Here we have yet another good Spike episode. The whole keeping Thorax and Ember away from each other thing is a bit annoying, but that's kind of the point. Thankfully, the last act is pretty great and the episode is one of the season's funniest. The derpy joke is especially great and I fucking died during it. But yeah, it's nice to see more of Ember and Thorax, and overall, it's a solid episode.
Tell me I'm
fighting!
Dragon dropped. A very weird episode where Rarity gets jealous of Gabby for hanging out with Spike. Even though it's weird, it makes for a very fun episode, plus it's nice to see more of Gabby and the wife Derpy.
The Book of Sega Genesis.
Inspiration, manifestation, holy shit. It took only 4 seasons, but they finally did it. They actually made a good Spike episode. I know Rarity is a main character, but she's out of character since she's being manipulated by the book. So this is definitely a Spike episode and not the Spike and Rarity episode. Spike has been an asshole in most of his episodes except for Spike at Your Service, but that one was also terrible for different reasons. Spike actually wants to do something in good nature for a change and help Rarity, although he obviously has done this before. But here the problem is caused because Spike does something in good nature instead of bad nature like his other episodes. Because of this, Spike is actually a likable or at the very least tolerable character here. It's very in character for him to not want to tell Rarity that what she's doing is wrong. 1, it's Rarity, and 2, some of the changes she's making don't appear to be that big of an issue. This includes Rainbow Dash struggling to fly in the air once she starts wearing a dress, which doesn't seem like a problem. Obviously, he notices that Rarity has been making changes for the worse and then tries to stop her. The ending is rushed, but it's not a big problem. I'm just very surprised and also happy that after 4 seasons, we finally got a good and even solid Spike episode.
I got a rock.
Rock solid friendship. During the later seasons, the writers started making odd pairings like this one, which has Starlight and Maud becoming friends. Just like always, Maud is great and I really enjoyed seeing her and Starlight develop a friendship. My only gripe is Pinky since she's pretty annoying here. I get that's the entire point of the episode, but still, it's just too much for me and is why I can't give this an 8 out of 10. Testing 1, 2, 3. The first act is pretty slow and I think way too much time is spent on Twilight trying to teach Dash. It would have been better if more time was spent on everyone else trying to teach Dash instead. Another complaint I have is Dash herself. Sometimes I laughed and enjoyed her, but other times I was more so annoyed at her, especially when she yells at Twilight. Like she's trying to help you study for your test and you're yelling at her? What an asshole. Once the second act starts though, this turns from a fine to a great episode. It's really fun seeing everyone try to teach Dash in their own way, most notably Pinky since she starts rapping, which is great. A moral that everyone learns in their own unique way is great and probably the best part of the episode. I would like to give this one an 8 out of 10, but the first act is slow when Dash, while not at her worst, isn't at her best either.
My hero!
Wonderbolts Academy. This could have been an easy 8 out of 10 episode, but it's held back by having a not pointless but still annoying and fillerish B-plot with Pinky. Her writing is notably weaker in season 3 and it shows a lot in this episode. Her along with everyone else could be removed and most of the episode would stay the same. The only thing they need to do is replace them with some of the other Wonderbolts during the last act and it would have worked. As for the actual Dash part, it's pretty well done, although it's still predictable. Lightning Dust is just better Gilda. She's an ass, but not a scumbag. But yeah, there's a great episode in here, but its flaws hold it back from being one.
Was that the bite of 87?
A matter of principles. A lot of people don't seem to like this episode, and I understand why. This is definitely a guilty pleasure for me because even though I know it's very flawed, I still really enjoy it for the most part. Discord is out of character and feels much more like season 4 or even season 3 Discord. He's much more malevolent and an asshole, but the thing is, I really like that side of him, so that's why I had a lot of fun with this one. This is a Spike, Starlight, and Discord episode, so that's new and different. There are some really dumb things about this episode though. Starlight casts a spell on Discord that banishes him from entering the school, however his ghost can still enter, which makes absolutely no sense. There's also the ending, which has a really awful message and is the sole reason I can't give this episode anything high higher than a 7. Starlight forgives Discord and says it's her fault that she didn't let him help out around the school. She says she should have listened to him, and because of that decides to make him vice principal, which I don't even think she has the authority to do. That's a horrible lesson since Discord did nothing but act like an asshole, so the fact that he gets rewarded for it is terrible. That being said, this immediately gets followed with Twilight and everyone coming back and revealing that Discord cast a fake friendship spell on them. That made me shit myself laughing, even though again, this is pretty out of character for season 8 Discord. Even though Starlight forgiving and rewarding Discord is awful, he doesn't actually get rewarded, which is why I can still enjoy the episode to the extent that I do. And like I said, the reason for that is because this episode is one of the funniest of the later seasons. Yes, you do have to accept that Discord is regressed, but if you do that, then you might have a really good time with this one. Well, it took a while, but that's finally all the 7 out of 10 episodes. The next batch are the 8 out of 10s, which are all pretty damn good, and the highest ones even being great. There might be some minor complaints I have with them, or they just don't do anything amazing to bump them up to a 9 out of 10. But either way, let's continue.
That friendship,
Friendship University. So apparently people don't seem to like this episode either, and I don't really know why. This is the 4th Flim and Flam episode, and it is their weakest one, although it's still really fun. They're both very entertaining characters, and they have yet another catchy song. You can call me a moron, but there was a small part of me that actually thought Flim and Flam weren't pulling a scam this time. This is their last appearance besides Best Gift Ever, so I thought the writers wanted to redeem them before the series ended. Star Swirl is in this episode, and I thought they were going to have him teach Twilight a lesson that anyone can change, which would have been interesting. But no, they're still assholes, and I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not a fan of redeeming every single villain, so I'm glad that they just continue to be con artists for their entire lives. Leap of Faith, another Flim and Flam episode. It's not as fantastic as their first episode, but it's still pretty fun. The song is catchy, and Applejack is handled very well here. It doesn't seem out of character for her to lie since she notices how happy Granny Smith has become. Also, I love how Flim and Flam leave before they get shit on by everyone.
What the dog doing?
A Dog and Pony Show. I'm probably ranking this one a bit too high, but I can't help it. It has its problems. The first half is just okay, and the second half has some minor pacing issues. But even so, this is one of the funniest season 1 episodes. Rarity may be worse pony, but seeing her bitch and moan for half an episode is way too entertaining. This episode also introduces the Diamond Dogs, and oh boy, there's a lot of porn of them for some reason.
And to the A to the U tried P. Ain't no other pony found a man like me.
Pinky Apple Pie. Season 4 had a pretty weak start, but after 8 episodes, we finally got a great one. Pinky thinks she's part of Applejack's family, and we see the family slowly fall apart in a realistic and not forced way. It's all done with good intention because that's how Applejack's family is, which makes sense and is why it works really well. Also, I was very surprised by the ending. I thought Pinky wouldn't be part of Applejack's family according to the book, but instead it's left up to the viewer, which is pretty great. But yeah, great lesson, great song, and just a solid and fun episode. Viva Las Pegasus. There's a lot of setup in this episode, and the first half is notably slow. However, the second half is where this turns from a good to a great episode. Seeing Flim and Flam team up with Applejack and Fluttershy is such a great idea. It's also crazy that the two of them got tricked for once. It's disappointing that they don't have another song, but I won't hold that against the episode. The ending was also shocking and really stupid, but in a good and funny way. So yeah, the first half is slow, but it's well worth it since the second half is so great.
Green is not a creative color.
Green isn't your color. Fluttershy becomes a model and Rarity becomes jealous of her. It works pretty well and none of the characters' actions feel forced at all. The only problem is that it's a season 1 episode, which means Twilight is shoehorned in here for no reason. Twilight wants to tell Fluttershy and Rarity what each of them is actually thinking, but for some reason Pinky tells her not to, which while funny is really dumb. But besides that, it's an above average episode, plus photo finish is fun too.
I am so frustrated I could just scream.
But they are, and they're using actors.
Horseplay.
327. Oh, unless you just did. Then it's 328.
Another Celestia episode, so I can't really complain. I like finding out that Celestia has an interest in becoming an actress even though she's terrible at it. Not only that, but we get actual backstory on her and Star Swirl, which is genuinely really cool. It's kind of annoying to see Twilight not tell Celestia the truth, but this is her mentor, so it is in character for her and makes sense. Overall, a very entertaining, unique, and funny episode.
Yeah, Peter Griffin.
The Fault in Our Cutie Marks. A very interesting idea for an episode where a griffin named Gabby wants to get a cutie mark, even though that's impossible. It's a bit predictable, but the ending is nice, so I don't mind. Also, why are they learning calculus or whatever the fuck that's called in elementary school? That makes no sense.
You are fake news.
Ponyville Confidential. A very fun episode despite some of its shortcomings. I know Diamond Tiara is an asshole, but this is just too cruel even for her. Cheerily not reading and noticing what's been going on with the newspaper club makes no sense and is easily the episode's biggest problem. The ending is predictable and I kind of wish it was something a lot different. I think it would have been better if the CMC wrote a story about Diamond Tiara so she could learn how it feels to be fucked with. But although this episode has its issues, it's still really entertaining and funny, so I don't mind them too much. Top Bolt. Vapor Trail is great and I hope she fucks Sky. I really like how as kids Vapor got too much attention, meanwhile Sky got basically none. Sky's an asshole, but there's a good reason for it at least, so I don't mind. The ending is pretty satisfying and the lesson that being too kind to someone can actually harm them is good, even if it is similar to the one in Breezy's. But this episode is great and Breezy sucks, so I don't really care. The Last Laugh. Season 9 brought back some characters that I didn't ask for, but I don't mind another cheese sandwich episode. Obviously, this isn't as great as Pinkie Pride, but I don't think anyone was expecting it to be. On its own, this is still a really fun episode that unsurprisingly has another great song. Also, Cheese needing to see other people laugh in order to laugh himself is great.
I just don't know what went wrong.
The Last Roundup. A great and funny Applejack episode. The chase scene at the end was great, and this episode has the wife derpy talk for the first time. Although the lesson of living up to others' expectations is great, it's sort of too similar to Sonic Rainbooms. It's a minor complaint, but at least Applejack is learning it instead of Dash again.
Sure, but with all the bucking and the bawling.
Common Ground. I had no idea Quibble Pants would get another episode, so I lost my shit when he showed up. I didn't need another Quibble Pants episode, but fuck it, I'll take it. It's obviously not as great as Stranger Than Fanfiction, but it's still really good and fun in its own different way. The lesson of being yourself and not needing to change in order to impress others is also pretty great. You can impress others just by being yourself. School Raise. The season 8 finale is pretty good, although not as good as some of the others. All magic in Equestria starts to vanish, which is a really interesting concept. It forces the characters, or more so the unicorns, to do things they aren't used to. Cozy Glow is the villain, and she's pretty fun. I love that even though she's a literal child, the series doesn't bother to redeem her, which is funny. You're telling me that the show has redeemed all these villains, but they decided to send a small child to hell. That's so weird, but I like it, so I'm not going to complain. Not only is Cozy Glow here, but T-Rex is as well. He doesn't do much, but just seeing him again is great. I love that he wants to trap the main 6, but then realizes that he'll be stuck with them the entire time. Overall, a solid finale that also includes the wife Derpy Hooves.
Too many cooks.
Too many Pinkie Pies. Pinkie clones herself and fucks up the entire town. It's really cool, really dumb, but most importantly, really fun. I like that Pinkie messes up so badly that she starts to believe that she isn't the real Pinkie, which is really in character for her. But yeah, this is one of Pinkie's stronger episodes for sure. What Lies Beneath. A great episode that finally helps develop the Student 6. I really wish this was one of the first episodes of the season, since it would have made me care for them much sooner. Seeing everyone face their fears was great, and overall, this is just a very well written episode. Do princesses dream of magic sheep? It's always great to see more Luna in the series. While it's not as good as Luna Eclipsed, it's not much worse. The last act is by far the best part of the episode since it's a dream, so the writers were able people to do whatever they wanted. Big Mac becomes an alicorn and Spike turns into a Chad and rides the wave derpy, so that's epic. Just watch where you're touching her, Spike, or else I'll kill you. Anyway, I was genuinely surprised to find out that the monster was created by Luna the entire time. I thought it was just a monster that's been around for a long time, but surprisingly it wasn't.
I still see your shadows in my room.
Shadow play. This season had multiple episodes that set up for this finale, and while none of those episodes were great, the payoff was worth it. Unlike season 4 where the setup for the finale was obvious, I was actually surprised by this. I didn't realize that the season telling stories of legendary equestrians would build up to this. It's great to see Starswirl the Bearded interact with Twilight, even though he's kind of an ass. I really like how Twilight is biased towards Starswirl, so Starlight is forced to show that he's in the wrong. It's obvious that Sinjian is going to be saved in the end, but it's a minor complaint, especially since this is a pretty solid two-parter. There are some great things in here. It's a bit slow in part 1, but it's still really good. The Gift of Maud Pie. A pretty fun Maud, Pinky, and also for some reason Rarity episode. It's a bit predictable, but it's entertaining enough where I don't mind. Also, the funny meme staff is in here too.
I baked you a pie.
Secrets and Pies. This is purely a very fun episode. It's very simple and there's not much to it, but it's really entertaining and it's one of the funniest season 7 episodes. My only gripe is that Dash is an ass for throwing out Pinky's pie in the beginning. Every other time she gets rid of the pies, she gives it to someone else to eat, so this is just a waste.
Execute Order 66.
The best gift ever. The final Christmas special, and actually only special in the series that isn't a movie. The pacing is very weird since it's 45 minutes and not 2 separate episodes, but I don't mean that in a negative way. And since it's 45 minutes, each plot has enough time to develop and none of them are rushed. I will nitpick and say that some plot lines are notably more interesting than others, but there's a lot of them, so that's kind of bound to happen. The derpy scene is by far the best part and had me piss myself laughing. While this is a pretty solid special, I still prefer Hearthbreakers even though it's not by much. Also, this part was pretty funny too.
What
Hey, you guys are watching Bird Up.
A bird in the hoof. I'm probably rating this higher than I should, but I can't help it. The first act is sort of slow and not much really happens in this episode, but it's hard carried by how well all of the jokes land. This is season 1, so the writers are trying a lot of different things to see what works, and that includes the humor in this episode. It's very distinct compared to a lot of the other episodes, and it's one of the funniest season 1 episodes. I especially like how Twilight believes that Celestia is going to banish Fluttershy to a forest because she took her pet. That's stupid, but also funny. Call of the Cutie, the very first Apple Bloom episode about her wanting to get her cutie mark. It's pretty fun, and the lesson that being patient in life as well as realizing that it's okay to be different from others is good. This episode also introduced Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle, but also the assholes Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, so fuck them. Three's a crowd. The first half is very, very slow when the actual plot doesn't start until exactly 10 minutes in. That being said, this is a Discord episode, so all he has to do is just be Discord and I'll be entertained. So even though this episode has major pacing issues as well as a filler song, Discord is great and hard carries it. He's literally just an asshole the entire time, which is always fun. I love how at the end he's disappointed when he finds out that he didn't ruin Twilight's day and actually ends up getting sick for real. So yeah, this episode has notable problems, but what it does right, it does very right. Also, Cadence is here, so that's hot.
Of course you're a girl,
Dragon Shy. The very first Fluttershy episode. It's pretty simple and pretty funny. I know Fluttershy gets shit on for learning the same lesson multiple times, but this was the first time she learned not to be scared or shy. It's kinda weird that there's just a giant dragon living near Ponyville when we find out that nearly all of them live somewhere far away later on. But this is an early season 1 episode and the writers were still developing the world, so I'm not going to hold it against the episode.
It's time to
stop!
It's about time. A really cool concept for an episode that works pretty well. Sure, it technically doesn't make sense, but fuck time travel logic. The first act is a bit slow and the first scene in Ponyville isn't that great, but everything else is pretty fun. Also, Twilight's design is cool too.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Flutter brother. So apparently people don't like this episode, and I'm pretty sure it's mainly because they don't like Zephyr. Like, I get it, he's an asshole, but his parents never disciplined him, which is why he ended up the way he did. Maybe it's because some people find him too relatable. If so, then that's a pretty stupid reason. As for me, I don't have a problem with him since I find him really funny. For example, he thinks Dash is only becoming a Wonderbolt to impress him, which is great. It's pretty satisfying seeing him finally be able to do something by the end. Also, Fluttershy is written really well here. This is probably one of her strongest episodes. The song is really good, and this joke is also great too.
I'm sorry, but I am just so peeved right now.
Watch your profanity.
I've got 2 tickets to paradise.
The Ticket Master. This is the very first non-two-parter episode, and it's actually really damn good. It does a great job at showing off the main cast and does it in a much better way than the last episode did. I really like how some characters' reasons for going to the gala are clearly much better than others. Applejack wants to go so she could sell her apples to make money for her family. Meanwhile, Pinkie just wants to have a party there. The only nitpick I have is that all Twilight had to do was ask Celestia for more tickets, which he even tells her at the end too. However, I think Celestia giving Twilight only 2 tickets and Twilight not thinking of asking are both in character for them. Celestia probably thinks Twilight only has 1 close friend since she just moved to Ponyville at this point. Also, Twilight not asking Celestia for more tickets is because she might think Celestia will say no. She's probably too nervous to ask her mentor for more tickets as something that's limited to only a small number of ponies. But yeah, this episode is pretty underrated and one of the better season 1 episodes.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
The main attraction. I'm not a fan of Electric Boogaloo or whatever the hell the genre is called, but I really like the techno song as well as the other one at the end too. This episode is great. It's one of Applejack's better episodes, and I hope the manager gets hit by a truck or gets stepped on by T-Rex.
No, little Billies, this is not midnight.
Luna Eclipsed. After an entire season, we finally got the Luna episode, and it was well worth the wait. The first Christmas special we got was really disappointing and shitty, but thankfully the first Halloween special ended up being great. Season 2's animation is notably stronger than 1's, and it's easy to tell in this episode. For whatever reason, Rarity isn't in this episode, and it's never explained why. According to Lauren Foster herself, she was planned to be in one scene where she gives Luna a makeover, but it got cut, so that sucks. Besides that, the ending has Luna realize that people have fun getting scared by her, which is great. It's a very straightforward but fun episode. Hearthbreakers. Fuck you, Meriwether Williams. This is how you make a Christmas special. It's great, it's fun, it's funny, and it's also unique in that it only centers around Pinkie and Applejack's family. That also means that we get to see more of Maud as well as Pinkie's other sisters, so that's good too. For whatever reason, Big Mac and Marble have a thing for each other, which is really weird. I know Big Mac is kind of a redneck, but I didn't think he'd be into incest. I guess the writers realized this shortly after, which is why he goes after the hot mama Sugarbelle in season 7. Although not by a lot, this is the best Christmas special of the series. The Lost Treasure of Griffinstone.
Was that the bite of
21?
After 5 seasons, Gilda is finally back and gets redeemed since she was an asshole. It's obvious that Gilda is going to become friends with Pinkie and Dash, but the episode is well written, so it's not really an issue. I like how Gilda is the only one to get redeemed, and now it's up to her to change everyone else in her town. Also, the scene showing how the treasure was stolen looks great too.
It's summertime, and you know what that means.
The Summer Sun Setback. Tira, Chrysalis, and Cozy Glow fuck with the Summer Sun Festival and steal a book inside the castle. Meanwhile, the main 6 try to stop them from ruining the event, even though they don't know that they're there. I would have liked to see more from the villains in this episode and less on the main 6, but that's just me. Also, how do some of the ponies not know who Cozy Glow is? That's kind of hard to believe.
Going to love
The best night ever. Despite not being a 2-part season finale, this is still a pretty great way to end season 1. The gala has been mentioned multiple times throughout the season, so it's nice that we actually see the cast go there in the last episode. At the gala is a pretty good song, and the lesson of things not always going as expected is good too. I like how Celestia explains that the gala is always boring, which is the main reason she invited everyone. The only very minor nitpick I have is that some characters get less screen time than others. Also, some character scenes are more interesting than others, but I'm really looking for stuff to complain about here. Definitely not the best finale, but for what it is, it's really good.
Why the fuck you lying?
Where the Apple Lies, a flashback episode of Applejack and Big Mac where we find out that Big Mac used to talk a lot and Applejack used to lie. It's an interesting concept for an episode, and it's definitely one of the best season 6 episodes. For some reason, people don't seem to like this episode, and I really don't see why. Granny Smith is a bit too grumpy, and the hospital scene is kind of a stretch. Pun not intended. Wouldn't the doctors know that Granny Smith isn't a doctor? Also, it's really convenient that someone just so happens to come in and take Big Mac away. But that's really it in terms of problems. Everything else is good. I really wanted to see more flashback episodes like this, but with the other main 6, but I'm still happy with this.
Applejack, what are you doing? You can't eat all those fucking apples.
Apple Buck season. The very first Applejack episode. It's very simple, but very funny and very good. I might like this one a lot since Applejack is one of my favorites, and part of that is because Applejack is very stubborn, just like me. Either way, this is still one of the better season 1 episodes.
You need to walk to the zoo? Well, who's stopping you?
Pickle seed!
What is love?
Hard to say anything. Big Mac now has a crush on a pony from Starlight's town named Sugarbelle, and the CMC try to help him pound her.
Pussy!
It's really silly, stupid, and funny. Not much to complain about, except that it's a bit similar to Hearts and Hooves Day. But there's enough differences that help set this apart, so it's not really an issue. I also like that Featherbangs turns out to be really shy in the end, which I wasn't expecting at all.
Technically,
The Maud couple. Maud now has a boyfriend. It's a dumb idea that works well. Mudbriar is one of the best side characters in the show. Just like Maud, he's funny because of his dry humor, but he's still funny in his own unique way. The technically joke is so dumb and funny, and I love it. Every time I say or think of the word, I just think of him now. I like that Pinky complains about Mudbriar, even though she loves Maud, who's very weird. We get to see Pinky's sisters for a bit, so that's neat. The ending is obviously predictable, but the episode is so entertaining and funny that I don't care.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scares here.
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
Fall Weather Friends. The 2 best ponies of the main 6 compete and race each other for the entire episode. I really like how this episode only happens because Dash is kind of an asshole. They both keep fucking each other over, and it escalates so much that they end up both coming in last place. It feels in character for both of them and not forced at all. My only gripe with this episode is that Twilight's in it and she doesn't need to be. Also, she somehow comes in 5th place because she read a book on how to win a race, which is by pacing yourself. I don't think that's how that works. Just because you read a book and followed its strategy doesn't mean you have the stamina and physique to win or come in 5th out of like 30 or 40 people. I don't think she's ever exercised in her life before, so this is really dumb. But besides that minor complaint, the rest of this episode is great.
I don't want to be the bad guy anymore.
Keep calm and flutter on. Discord is back, and he's still a funny asshole for the entire episode. As entertaining as he is though, there is one big problem here. His redemption is extremely rushed and kind of comes out of nowhere. It feels like they needed to wrap the episode up since they ran out of time, which sucks. Fluttershy is handled well here, and Angel gets tortured by Discord, which is great. I know some people don't like that Discord got redeemed, but I'm fine with it. He's still a hop knocker throughout the series and likes fucking with people. Also, him being redeemed redeemed means we get to see more of him in the show, so again, I don't have a problem with him being redeemed. I just wish his redemption here wasn't so half-assed. Well, that was all the 8 out of 10 episodes, so now it's time to cover the 9 out of 10s. These next episodes are some of the best in the series, although not the absolute best. These episodes are great and have barely anything wrong with them. What they do well, they do really well, but I just don't think they're some of my all-time favorites like the 10 out of 10s are.
Relinquish the royal crown to me at once!
Sparkle 7. Here we have the 200th episode in the series. It doesn't feel like a special episode, unlike Slice of Life, but it's still a great and fun episode. This might have the most shocking ending out of any episode in the series as well. I was genuinely surprised to find out that Spike planned to take the crown from the beginning. The use of foreshadowing in this episode is excellent. The only nitpick I have is that everyone deciding on what to do as a plan drags on for a bit, but that's about it. Also, Zephyr is in it, so that's great.
This is your last chance.
No second prances. Starlight and Trixie becoming friends is an amazing idea, and it works way too well. Their chemistry is great, and although I like all their episodes, this is easily their best. While I don't think it's a problem, I could see that some people could say that Twilight acts a bit out of character here, but I think her concern for Starlight is due to her not wanting to disappoint Celestia, which we've seen plenty of times before.
It's time to do.
Magic Duel. Trixie is back, and thankfully this episode is much better than her first one. Trixie is much more powerful than Twilight, so the stakes are very high here. I love how Twilight wins by outsmarting her, and Trixie's outfit looks really cool too. Overall, it's just a very fun and well-written episode. Also, the Wilhelm scream is in it for some reason. Sleepless in Ponyville. Great Scootaloo episode where she worries about not wanting to disappoint Rainbow Dash. It's similar to Sonic Rainboom, except this time Dash teaches her the lesson instead. The scene with Dash and Scootaloo at the end is fantastic and probably one of the best scenes in the entire show. Billy Vanelli. Everything in this episode feels very natural and almost no one acts out of character or like an ass. They brought back Flutter Guy from Bridal Gossip, which is really cool, and they incorporated it great here. The song is great, although I wish there was at least another one, especially since it's kind of short and plays multiple times throughout the episode. It's weird that they go around town just to sing 1 minute long song, but that's a nitpick. The ending is nice. Fluttershy overcomes her stage fright, but only by a certain amount. The only bad thing about this episode is Pinkie. She's been hit or miss since season 3, and this is easily one of her worst. She's just annoying and makes Fluttershy feel like shit. Thankfully, she's barely in the episode, so this isn't that big of an issue, but it's still annoying. Also, the group that sings is called Pony Tones, not to be mistaken with Deftones.
Associate with
Bridal Gossip. It's a season 1 episode, so it's very simple, especially the lesson, plus it's a bit predictable too. The only problem is that Apple Bloom leaves Applejack in the forest by herself when she's small. It's just mean and really out of character for her. Also, Twilight can't use magic because her horn is messed up, but she's still able to move her hairbrush around, which doesn't make sense. But besides that, this episode is great and one of the best and funniest season 1 episodes.
If I can prove that I never touched my balls, will you promise not to tell another soul what you saw?
I'm gay.
Brotherhood Social. Big Mac dresses up as and talks like a girl for an entire episode. It's just as dumb and entertaining as you'd expect it to be. This episode takes place alongside the previous episode, Made in Manhattan, which is neat, I guess. They took the Sisterhood Social concept, reused it, but did something new and different with it. Sisterhood Social is ever so slightly better, but this is still great. Also, the last scene with Big Mac and Apple Bloom is a top 10 scene in the show. It's fantastic.
Winter wrap up, winter wrap up.
Winter Wrap-Up, a classic season 1 episode, and it's still great to this day. Winter Wrap-Up is one of the best songs in the series, and thankfully the rest of the episode is just as great too. The lesson of finding your own place in life works really well. Also, it makes sense and isn't forced that Twilight doesn't want to use her magic to help everyone. She's new to Ponyville and doesn't want to mess with their traditions, so I'm fine with it. Even though it's called Winter Wrap-Up, I like to think I'm funny, so I call it Winter Fap-Up. The last problem. I'm not gonna lie, this episode was disappointing, but that's only because this is seen as one of the best episodes. So because of that, I was expecting this to be one of the best episodes, which it wasn't, but it's still great. Half of the episode is a flashback of Twilight saying goodbye to her friends, which, while nice, isn't what I wanted from the finale. I really wanted this to strictly be a time skip episode where we see how the world and characters have changed over the years. We do get that in the last act, which is easily the best part of the episode, especially the last couple minutes. Seriously, the last couple minutes carries this episode and is probably the best part of the series, or at least a top 3 moment. It's a perfect send-off to the series, and I can't imagine a different one being better than this. If it wasn't for the last couple minutes, this would have easily been an 8 or maybe even 7 out of 10 episode. But yeah, while I like seeing Twilight's ceremony and her saying goodbye to everyone, I think that should have been a separate episode entirely. I still have a lot of unanswered questions after watching this episode. Are Fluttershy and Discord married? Are Rainbow Dash and Applejack actually lesbians and scissor each other every night? Did Spike ever fuck Ember or Gabby or Rarity? I don't know, and I really wish this episode answered these questions or at least made them more clear. Overall, this is a good finale, even if it's hard carried by its last couple minutes. Gauntlet of Fire. This episode is a big fuck you to Meriwether Williams. The writers watched Dragon Quest, realized it was shit, and then made this. Just like Dragon Quest, the designs of the dragons are good. In fact, the newer ones like Ember and the Dragon Lord are great. Ember is one of the best side characters in the show and is probably the best part of the episode. My only problem is that Twilight and Rarity are in it for no reason, and the episode would have been better without them. I get that this is pretty much a remake of Dragon Quest, but you didn't need to reuse one of the most pointless parts of the episode. I understand that some rewriting would need to be done, but I don't think it's anything drastic, and more importantly, it would benefit the episode. I enjoyed Inspiration Manifestation, but this was the first and only great Spike episode. That's why I wanted to see more of Spike and Ember instead of Twilight and Rarity. It's a minor problem in an otherwise great episode.
Hello, I'm Sweetie Belle and I want to play.
Sisterhood Social. The first half is a bit slow, but the setup is important for later in the episode. Both Rarity and Sweetie Belle are very in character. I know Rarity is kind of mean in the beginning, but Sweetie Belle did mess with her stuff, so it makes sense. That's kind of why this episode works so well, since no one is really in the wrong. It's a great episode about siblings fighting, and the lesson is fantastic. Hearts and Hooves Day. This is probably one of the most controversial and hot takes, but this episode is great, or at least I have a blast every time I watch it. I'll admit that it doesn't have the strongest message and it doesn't do anything that'll blow you away, but what it does have is Big Mac and Cheerilee simping for each other for half the episode. It's hilarious and probably one of the funniest episodes of the entire show. I know some people really hate this episode and I don't understand why. The CMC did create a love potion, or I guess poison, but it was all in good intention, just like everything else the CMC does that's wrong. There's only 2 minor problems with this episode. Twilight handing over the book to the CMC without asking any questions is weird, especially since she knows it's a love poison and not a potion. There's also a song which is really forgettable and probably one of the weakest in the entire series. I think this could have been replaced with a short montage which would have been better. But besides those small issues, this episode is way too fun.
What you need is a little help from the love monkey.
The breakup breakdown. A very weird concept to have another Big Mac Spike in Discord episode, but I guess they already did one, so might as well do another one. It's the second Hearts and Hooves Day episode, but it's different enough since the CMC aren't trying to help Big Mac get pussy. Derpy messing up Big Mac's package of Sugar Bell was fantastic and killed me. The only minor problem is that the B-plot of the CMC is kinda pointless, but it's very brief and their scenes are still fun anyway. Overall, a very dumb and entertaining episode.
No question.
The Big Mac question. They actually fucking did it. They gave my boy Big Mac a happy ending. I am so happy that he marries Sugar Bell and gets to have rough sex with her for the rest of his life. The writers knew this episode was great, which is probably why this is the last normal episode of the series before the big finale. Discord is in it and he's great, but the ending is by far the best part of the episode. Between dark and dawn.
Lucky star!
Celestia and Luna decide to go on vacation, and it's just as fun as it sounds. They end up fighting because Celestia wants to do a bunch of crazy shit while Luna just wants to relax. Considering the jobs each of them have to do every day, this fits perfectly. The only nitpick is that the B-plot of Twilight and everyone isn't that great. It's neat to have Twilight take over for Celestia and all, but I was much more interested in seeing Celestia and Luna instead. Also, the song is amazing. I've had it stuck in my head for a while now and I can't get it out. Please help. Suited for Success, the very first Rarity episode, and no, I'm not counting Look Before You Sleep since that was a Rarity and Applejack episode. Even after all this time, this is still one of Rarity's best episodes. Art of the Dress is an amazing song, the lesson is great, and we even get Dash's best line in the entire show.
It needs to be about 20% cooler.
The Cutie Mark Chronicles. I really enjoyed seeing how the main cast all got their cutie marks and how they all got them due to Rainbow Dash. I guess that's just proof that she's indeed the best of the main six. But yeah, I love that all of them have been connected for so long, even though they didn't become friends until much later in their lives.
I don't care that you broke your elbow.
Read it and weep. Clearly a metaphor for people not giving the show a chance, which is great, but this can obviously be interpreted as anything. Daring Do is cool, the lesson is great, and this is still one of Dash's best episodes.
No cheese!
Pinky Pride. Cheese Sandwich is great, and that's mainly due to Weird Al. Pretty much all the songs are great, the concept is great, and the episode is really fun. I love that Pinky ended up inspiring Cheese to be a party planner when he was a kid. This is overall a very well written episode. I don't think it's one of the absolute best, but it's at least one of Pinky's best.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!
Sonic Rainboom.
Number 15.
Great episode about living up to everyone's expectations. The Sonic Rainboom looks sick, and this is without a doubt one of the best looking season 1 episodes. It's cool to see most of an episode take place in Cloudsdale since we've rarely seen it until this episode. But yeah, this one's a classic. It also inspired the god-awful fan episode Double Rainboom. Hurricane Fluttershy. Here we have another great Fluttershy episode. The lesson that everyone's help and efforts count is great, and the last act is awesome. It's cool to see how Cloudsdale gets their water, and this also has the first appearance of the pedophile Bulk Biceps.
Sex with children.
Shut up! Sounds of Silence. The concept of having a village where everyone is mute is really interesting. The song is amazing, and the lesson is easily one of the absolute best in the series. I'm very surprised that it took the writers this long to cover it.
Twilight was better before she got wings.
Fame and Misfortune. This is one of the funniest episodes in the show, and that's because the humor in it is meta.
We want to know why Fluttershy keeps learning the same thing over and over again. Be assertive already!
The song is good, but the best part about it is that it ends up being a big waste of time since no one cares that they sang it. The ending and lesson are also pretty great too. Even though a lot of people won't understand or like what you're trying to do, as long as just a couple people like it, then that's all that matters. Also, I like how everyone is still arguing outside the castle, which doesn't even get resolved. I kinda wish they continued to argue during the credits. That would have been great.
Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it's
so you don't have to.
Stranger than fanfiction. Is it bad that I like this more than Read It and Weep? I don't know, but either way, this episode is great. The concept alone is great, and I'm glad it was executed so well. Dash goes to a Daring Do convention and meets a fan who only likes the original trilogy of Daring Do's books. Quibble Pants is hilarious, and just like Fame and Misfortune, I love this episode because of its meta humor. While not the most important lesson in the series, I'd say this is my personal favorite lesson. You can like something for different reasons, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, you both still like the same thing. I might be rating this one a bit too high, but I can't help it. It's just really fun to watch. The beginning of the end. I did not expect the princesses to retire, but I guess it does make sense. It's a bit disappointing that they decided to wait a few more years until they do though. It would have been fun to see Twilight and probably others dick around in the castle in Canterlot. Bringing back all the villains is awesome, and seeing them all interact is great. It's surprising and also a bit disappointing to see Sombra actually take over the Crystal Empire and almost all of Equestria. I thought for sure he'd fail within a couple minutes and then everyone else would try and take over by themselves. It's still cool to see Sombra be a threat again, but it's a bit underwhelming considering all these villains are here in one place. I really wanted to see them all take over, but we had to wait for the finale for that. Sombra is an actual character now, which was one of my biggest problems with him in the season 3 premiere. I will say that it is really weird seeing him talk a lot, especially since his voice is weird. The Tree of Harmony and the elements are gone, so that's crazy, even though the tree does come back in the literal next episode. Stakes feel very high, but Discord is here, so we could have easily stopped Sombra. While this is one of the better two-parters, I have to admit that I am a bit disappointed with it. I wanted to see more from the other villains and less from Sombra. What we got is still great, but it's the reason why this is a 9 out of 10 instead of a perfect 10.
21.
Crusaders of the Lost Mark. It's amazing seeing the CMC get their marks after all these years. It's such a great idea to have them help out Tiara in order to get their marks too. I'm very surprised that this episode was able to make me feel bad for Diamond Tiara since she's been an asshole for so long. Not every redemption in the show works, but this one does. The pony I want to be is great, Made Your Mark is pretty good, but the vote song is just okay. Also, Spike sending the letter to Celestia at the end just like he does in the intro was amazing. They didn't need to do that, but they did.
Hi, how are you?
Discordant Harmony. Another amazing Discord episode. Discord is having a tea party with Fluttershy, but this time at his house instead of hers. He worries that Fluttershy will think his house is weird, so he tries to make it normal. It's really damn funny. I love how simple it is, even though it's a bit predictable. I like that Discord will literally disappear if he's not creating chaos.
I don't feel so good.
Ponies, 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 ponies.
Slice of Life, the 100th episode in the series, and it's literally just fan service the episode, which I'm 100% fine with. This is just a giant love letter to the fandom, and I can't believe they were able to make this episode at all. Yes, it's not the best or most well-written episode, but it's just way too fun seeing all these background characters get the spotlight for once. I know having too much fan service isn't always a good thing, but I think it works well here. I can see if some people don't like this episode since it's basically just fan service, but I can't help it. This one is really fun to watch. I don't think it's one of the absolute best episodes in the show, but it's still great.
You are a that likes bananas.
A royal problem. What a great idea for an episode. Celestia and Luna are fighting with each other, and the one to solve it is Starlight and not Twilight. I've been waiting to see more from these characters for a while now, and I'm glad it finally happened. My only nitpick is that it's not the most original idea. Two characters are fighting and they need to be put in each other's shoes in order to understand how tough their lives are. It's predictable, but that's fine considering how well written and fun the episode is. We get Daybreaker, which is really sick, and we even see Luna eating a banana, which I refuse to believe isn't a reference to Friendship is Magic, bitch.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
Amending Fences. A great concept for an episode episode. Let's have the Princess of Friendship realize that she forgot all about her friends from Canterlot and how she herself used to be a shit friend. I am very surprised at how this episode turned out. For most of the episode, I thought Minuet, Lemonheart, and Twinkleshine weren't going to care for Twilight and only like her since she's a princess, or they either wouldn't like her at all since they're assholes, but thankfully that didn't happen. The James Woods piece of candy reference is great, Moon Dancer is great, and it's very satisfying seeing her and Twilight become friends again.
And it's what is telling me.
Magical Mystery Cure. This episode is amazing. I really wanted to give it a 10 out of 10, but it just feels too rushed in some areas and desperately feels like it needed to be a two-parter. Having the main six switch all their marks is really cool, and I wanted to see more of them act out of character. The pacing is very tight, which is good, but again, maybe a bit too tight in some areas. All the songs are great, which is crazy considering how many songs there are in this episode. Twilight becoming an alicorn is nice, but it feels rushed. I really wish this was a two-parter because I think if it was, it could have been one of the best episodes in the whole show. We're done with all the 9 out of 10s, so now it's time to move on to the 10 out of 10s. These episodes are perfect, or at least as close to perfect as they can be. There might be some very minor problems with them, but if there are, they're just nitpicks. And even so, what these episodes do right, they do extremely well.
Number 15.
The Cutie Markless. Starlight is a fun villain, and it's cool to see a villain that's just a regular unicorn instead of one like Tira, Chrysalis, and Discord. I love how the stakes feel very high, even though again, the villain is just a unicorn. And all she's done is take over one small town in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like all of Equestria is at risk of being taken over. Seeing someone able to remove someone else's cutie mark is really cool. I love how nearly the entire episode takes place in just one tiny village too.
I have to tell you about the future!
The Cutie Remark. It's extremely difficult choosing between the season 5 premiere and finale, but I'd say the finale is a hair better. Twilight gets sent to multiple different timelines where Equestria is ruined. It's a sick concept, and it's crazy that the world would be fucked up if Rainbow Dash didn't perform her Sonic Rainboom as a kid. Again, this is just more proof that she's best pony of the main 6. It's really cool to see what if scenarios where each villain takes over Equestria. Also, more importantly, this episode made Nightmare Moon threatening and cool for once, which I can't believe they did. She sucked as a villain before, but here she's one of the best parts of the episode. My only nitpick is that half of it is just Twilight going to different worlds. While it is very fun, it does get repetitive and makes it feel like not too much actually happened during the episode. Also, it's nice to see Starlight redeem, plus the last couple minutes are great as well.
It reminds me of me beer, which I like better.
The Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000. This episode is a blast from start to finish. Flim and Flame are amazing and so entertaining to watch. I like their other episodes, but none of them come close to their first appearance, and one of the reasons is because of their song. This is one of the catchiest songs in the whole show, but that's not the only reason why this episode is so great. The ending kills me every time I watch it. Applejack writes to Celestia and tells her that she didn't learn anything. This is one of my favorite endings to any episode in the show. This is only a season 2 episode, and during this time, every episode had a lesson in it, well, except the showstoppers, that is. However, this was the first episode where the writers wanted to say, fuck it, let's make an episode that's purely fun and lacks a lesson, and that's kind of why I love this one so much. If this was an episode in the later or even mid-seasons, then I'd probably lower it to a 9 out of 10, but the fact that this is only a season 2 episode really brings it up to a 10 for me. I know I'm probably rating this too high, but I have way too much fun with it.
Can you smell what the rock is cooking?
Maud Pie. The first and also still best Maud episode. It's pretty much perfect. Maud is one of the best side characters in the entire show. It's hilarious and the lesson is great too. Not everyone will end up being great friends, but there will be something friends can't agree on. And one of those is that they care for someone that they both like and are friends with. But yeah, this episode rocks.
Where's the leak? ma'am.
To where and back again. Chrysalis is back and has taken over most of Equestria. However, nearly everyone is captured by her, so it's up to Starlight, Trixie, Discord, and Thorax to save the day. It's such a bizarre concept, but it works really well. I like that later on, the series tried new things like putting together a bunch of side characters, especially for the finale of all things. I love that Starlight is nervous about going back to the town she used to rule over, so she brings Trixie to help her out. The Changeling and Chrysalis reveal is great, however, there's no foreshadowing for it, so it just comes out of nowhere. The stakes are some of the highest they've ever been before. Since they're pretty much the last 4 characters left, if they lose, then Chrysalis just wins. Also, no one can use magic in the Changeling Hive, so it raises the stakes even more. The Changeling Hive looks cool, and I like that Chrysalis is still evil at the end. It would have been dumb if she got redeemed, especially since this is the second time she's tried to fuck everyone over. Also, the wife Derpy is in it, so that's always good. Make new friends, but keep Discord. Besides Return of Harmony, this episode is Discord at his best. He's just a giant jealous asshole for the entire episode, and it's hilarious. I feel like this lesson only could have worked with Discord, or at least works the best because it's Discord. If it was anyone else, it would just come off as being an ass, but it fits so well for Discord since he's new to friendship. I can see if some people think Discord is being too mean here, but I think it's very in character for him. This episode has the schmoes. Also, drink your beer because Discord learned not to be an asshole. Party for one. Here we have the best season 1 and Pinky episode. It's hilarious, the facial expressions are great, and we get to see a side of Pinky we've never seen up to this point. It's kinda dumb that Pinky forgot her own birthday, but I guess that's in character for her, so I don't mind it. Lesson 0. It's kinda weird that this idea was used so early on, but I guess the writers realized that shoehorning Twilight in every episode was a problem, so they wanted to fix it as soon as possible. I love that Twilight thinks she'll get punished and get sent back to kindergarten for not sending Celestia a friendship lesson on time. It's hilarious and fits so well for her. The lesson of not always needing to have a lesson is great, but that's not the only one we get. There's also the lesson that just because you don't think something is a problem doesn't mean someone else won't too. If someone is worried about something that you think is dumb, you should still try and help them with their problem. The facial expressions are great, and this is the best torture porn episode in the show. The ending of the end. Although the final episode is great, this is the true finale for me. Rogar being revealed to be Discord was insane, and it immediately raised the stakes. Not having Discord around actually makes these villains threatening, although it would have been cool to see Discord fight all 3 of them. The stakes are the second highest they've ever been in the series. Having all the ponies fight against each other is great, and having Twilight students remind them of friendship works so well. All the fight scenes are great, the ending is epic, and I love that they get turned to stone. That's such a great callback to Return of Harmony. The series could have ended here without the last problem, and I would have been fine with it.
T is for priceless. The look upon your faces.
The perfect pair. A ton of people love this episode and say it's the best, and yes, it's one of my favorites, but I still think some are a bit better. After 7 years, it's finally great seeing what happened to Applejack's parents, even if we still don't know how they died. People think they got eaten by Timberwolves, which I think is a good fan theory, so I'm just going to believe that. It has a unique somber tone to it since it's about their dead parents. Also, fuck you, Tanks, for the memories. This is how you make an emotional episode. It is mainly a Romeo and Juliet story, but I don't care since it's so well written.
Your daughter marries a black man!
A Canterlot wedding. Season 2's premiere was fantastic, and so was its season finale. Part 1 does a great job at setting up Twilight being fucked over by Chrysalis, and Part 2 is where shit hits the fan. This episode introduced Shining Armor and Cadence, who are nice additions, but also one of the best villains in the show, Chrysalis. Her design is cool, she's extremely threatening, plus she gets to sing one of the best songs in the show too. The main 6 fighting the Changelings is awesome, and Part 2 in general is just insane. But yeah, everyone loves this episode. It's one of the best 2-parters and one of the best episodes in the entire show.
Life was like a box of chocolates.
Simple ways. This is one of the hottest takes on the list, but this episode is genuinely and unironically one of the best episodes in the series. This is easily one of the funniest episodes episodes. If not, then maybe the funniest, especially during the third act. It's so stupid, silly, and over the top, which is why I love it. Rarity has a crush on a writer who comes to Ponyville, but once he gets there, he falls in love with Applejack for no reason. Everything about this episode works. It's fucking hilarious, and the message is one of the strongest in the show. You shouldn't change yourself in order to impress others, especially when it comes to someone you like. I hope this episode starts to get appreciated more, because this really is one of the best in the series.
Bring me your virgins!
Return of Harmony. Season 1's premiere was just okay, and while only a typical one-part episode, the best night ever was pretty damn good. However, Return of Harmony is what set the standard for how amazing a two-parter in the series can be. Both parts are perfect. Discord is an amazing villain and one of my favorite characters in the whole show. His design is fantastic, his dialogue is hilarious, and his voice and acting are both great. The animation is also notably stronger than most Season 1 episodes. Season 1 doesn't look great, but Season 2's animation improved notably, and it's easy to tell in this episode. Pacing is perfect, comedy is top-notch, villain is fantastic. Overall, this is one of the series' best two-parters and best episodes.
How bad can I be?
Frenemies. I waited 8 episodes for this and it was well worth it. It's extremely entertaining seeing T-Rex, Cozy Glow, and Chrysalis being assholes to each other for nearly an entire episode. The only reason they decide to team up in the end is because they start making fun of Twilight and everyone, which is hilarious. There's also a song that all 3 of them sing, which I didn't ask for but didn't know I needed. It's one of my favorite songs in the show and I get it stuck in my head whenever I listen to it. This episode is perfect, and it's also the best non-two-parter episode.
Where is your pussy?
Twilight's Kingdom. Well, here we are with the best episode in the series. During Season 4, Twilight didn't really do much as a princess, but now she finally gets to do something that merits her being one. T-Rex is amazing. He's the best villain in the series, although I'd still say Discord is the best antagonist. He's super threatening, his voice is great, and him screaming all the time later on is really funny. His design is great, and having him manipulate Discord into turning evil again is genius. Also, it's in character for Discord to do this. His redemption in Keep Calm and Flutter On was rushed and unrealistic, so it's great that he gets the redemption arc he deserves here. The animation only got better as the series went on, and Season 4 continued to improve in terms of animation, but here it's clearly noticeable, especially during the fight scene. Seriously, the fight scene looks amazing and might be the best looking scene in the entire show. The series could have ended here and I would have been fine with it. Even though we still got some amazing episodes and even two-parters later on, they still never topped this episode. The stakes are still the highest they've ever been in the series here, which is why this episode is so damn exciting and fun. The voice acting in the show has always been great, but there are some amazing performances here, such as Discord and T-Rex. This is the best Season 4 episode, the best two-parter, and also the best episode in the entire series. Twilight's Kingdom is a masterpiece. Jesus Christ, that took way longer than I thought it would, but I'm still not done. That was all the episodes ranked, but I thought it'd be fun to add up all the ratings and see which season is technically the best. And after doing so, I wasn't too surprised by which were the best and worst, but there were still some surprises. Before I begin, there is one thing to note. Although I listed the two-parters as one episode, I did count them as 2 separate episodes for the season rankings. That's because they take up twice the amount of time as one episode, and they're technically 2 separate episodes anyway. But besides that, let's start with the worst season.
Number 9.
So here at last place is Season 8. Although not by much, Season 8 is the weakest season of the show. It's still fine, it's really weird and different, but not in a great way. The season introduced the Student 6 who aren't that memorable and overall are just sort of there. They're supposed to be important, but the show didn't do a good job at developing them or making me care for them. I like Yona, but everyone else is just fine. I don't know why we didn't get at least one episode about each of them. You'd think we'd get episodes that develop them individually, but no, we never did besides She's All Yak, which was in Season 9. The season had a pretty rough start since it had one of the weakest premieres that was also followed by mostly shitty episodes. There's some great episodes like the Breakup, Breakdown, and Sounds of Silence, but besides those, there's only a couple others that are great and everything else is at best just good. There are some guilty pleasures that I enjoy more than I should, like Friendship University and Matter of Principles. Most importantly though, this season didn't have just one, but two 1 out of 10 episodes, and they're also the 2 worst episodes of the entire show. Some ideas the season had work, like having another Hearts and Hooves Day episode, as well as giving Maud a boyfriend, but others like having Dash be with Granny Smith and her friends and having some fat ass pretend to be Spike's father just sucked. The finale was pretty fun, although certainly not one of the series' best. Overall, season 8 is fine. There's some awful episodes, some good ones, and a couple great ones, but every other season is notably stronger than this. Finally, at the end of each season segment, I'll be listing the best and worst episodes, so I'll do that now. The worst episode is Yakety Sax, and the best is Sounds of Silence.
Number 8.
Season 3 is a mixed bag, and the only reason it's slightly above season 8 is because a larger percentage of it is great and not just good. It's the black sheep of the series, since it's the only season to be 13 episodes instead of 26. Just like seasons 1 and 7, it's also one of the few seasons to not have two two-parters. Despite this, the premiere was just good, meanwhile the finale was amazing. The reason season 3 is seen as one of the weakest seasons is because it's only 13 episodes, so the bad episodes stick out more. Also, there aren't just bad episodes, but some are plain terrible, like Spike at Your Service and One Bad Apple. I wouldn't mind the shorter length of the season, but again, this season is just hit or miss. Also, out of the 13 episodes, 2 of them are Spike ones, which is just stupid. The worst episode is One Bad Apple, and the best is Magical Mystery Cure.
Number 7.
I was kind of surprised to find out that season 7 was one of the weakest seasons, since I remember liking most of it. But after looking at all the episodes, I think I see why this is on the lower side. There are a couple amazing episodes in the middle, like The Perfect Pair and A Royal Problem. But besides that, everything else is just good, besides a couple strong and shitty ones. This is one of the 3 seasons to have a 1 out of 10 episode, which is Fluttershy Leans In. Oddly enough, this is the only season to not have a 2-parter premiere, which is weird. The finale, while not one of the best, was still pretty good. One of the season's biggest strengths was giving some of its side characters the spotlight. This includes characters like Big Mac, Discord, Celestia, and Luna, all of which got some of the best episodes of the season. But overall, a mostly fine season with some amazing episodes. The worst episode is Fluttershy Leans In, and the best is The Perfect Pair.
Number 6.
I was very surprised to find out that season 6 was listed higher than 7, although it's only by a tiny amount. The premiere was good, but still one of the series' weakest. Thankfully, the finale was one of the series' best. There's a decent handful of great episodes like Stranger Than Fanfiction and No Second Prances. Looking over the season again, I'm kinda surprised that there's as many solid episodes as there are. That being said, the season did have a new series low with 28 Pranks Later, which is one of the worst episodes in the series. As always, there's some shit episodes, but this season also gave us the first and only great Spike episode, Gauntlet of Fire. It's a bit of a mixed bag of a season, but every season has its gems and shitters. The worst episode is 28 Pranks Later, the best episode is To Where and Back Again, and the best non-two-parter is Stranger Than Fanfiction.
Number 5.
Season 4 has one of the weakest starts with only a decent premiere along with some just okay episodes. It wasn't until episode 10 where we got the first 8 out of 10 episode, which was then followed by some great episodes. Unfortunately, this string of episodes got followed with It Ain't Easy Being Breezy's and Some Pony to Watch Over Me, which are both shit. Even though those along with a couple others are bad, they aren't terrible. So at least there's nothing on the same level as Mare Duel or Spike at Your Service. Speaking of Spike, this season finally gave us a good Spike episode, which was nice. And of course there's a season finale, which is the best 2-parter as well as the best episode in the entire show. The worst episode is It Ain't Easy Being Breezy's, the best episode is Twilight's Kingdom, and the best non-2-parter is Simple Ways.
Number 4.
Season 2 had some of the best episodes in the show, but also had a handful of not just bad, but terrible episodes. We got some of the best 2-parters in the series, which were Return of Harmony and A Canterlot Wedding. However, this season also brought on a new infamous writer, Meriwether Williams. She wrote 4 episodes this season, and all of them are garbage. If she didn't write these few episodes, then season 2 would most likely be the best season. And that's assuming that these 4 episodes got replaced by just okay ones. So if you ignore the Merryweather episode, season 2 only has one bad and one mediocre episode, which is similar to what the first season had. Season 2 easily has the strongest start out of all the seasons. It starts with Return of Harmony, is followed by Lesson 0, Luna Eclipsed, and then Sisterhood Social. So yeah, fuck you, Merryweather Williams. Season 2 could have been the best season. Anyway, the worst episode is The Mysterious Ne'er-do-well, the best episode is Return of Harmony, and the best non-two-parter is Lesson 0.
Number 3.
Season 5 is overall pretty solid. Just like Season 2, this season has both an amazing premiere and finale. They aren't my absolute favorites, but they're still some of the series' best. As always, there's a couple bad episodes, with the only terrible one being What About Discord? There's some decent and good episodes, but half of this season is actually pretty great. I really enjoyed seeing this season take ideas from previous seasons and doing something new and different with them. This includes Heartwarming Eve, Sisterhood Social, and Nightmare Night, all of which are at least good episodes. There are some amazing episodes like Amending Fences, Crusaders of the Lost Mark, and Make New Friends but Keep Discord. Also, this season gave us Slice of Life, which was the 100th episode in the series, and it's great. Overall, one of the strongest seasons, and honestly, not much worse than the next two. Funny enough, both the best and worst episodes of the season are Discord ones, the worst being What About Discord, and the best being Make New Friends but Keep Discord.
Number 2.
The very first season of the series, and still it manages to be one of the best. It's kind of surprising since this season has the weakest two-parter of the series and also doesn't have a two-parter season finale. That being said, the main reason why the season is still so good is because it's very consistent. There are only 3 misfires, 2 of them being bad and 1 being mediocre. There's nothing terrible or even that bad in season 1, which is surprising considering every other season has at least 1 shit episode in it. Not only is it consistent, but it's consistently good too. There are some okay episodes, but 75% of the season are 7 out of 10 or higher episodes. There's only one 10 out of 10 episode, that being Party for One, but still, there's a good amount of great episodes too. This is a very slice of life and laid back season, and that's something I really like about it. I may love the two-parters in season 2, but there's a certain vibe this season has that the others just don't. Anyway, the worst episode is Owl's Wall That Ends Well, and the best is Party for One.
Number 1.
I'll admit I'm a bit surprised to see season 9, the very last season, be listed as the best. I thought this was one of the best for sure, but I didn't think it would be number 1. The premiere is great and the finale is one of the best in the series. There are 4 misses, one of them being mediocre, 2 being bad, and the last being a terrible one. However, the series has seen worse, and even season 5 had 1 terrible episode, yet that's still one of the best. Just like season 5, I'd say half of the season is great, and besides the few bad ones, everything else is good. Season 9 wanted to tie up loose ends like revealing Scootaloo's parents and giving Big Mac a happy ending. They also redeemed some characters like Garble, and while I don't agree with redeeming some of them, I'm still overall fine with it. This season also had an overarching plot which was new, and while not as great as it could have been, it was still pretty good. And no, I don't count the keys in season 4 as being an overarching plot since they don't have any effect on any other episode besides the finale. I love the idea of bringing back most of the previous villains in the series, but I wish I got to see more of them. Frenemies is one of the best episodes of the series, and again, I really wanted more episodes like this. There's also some other overarching plot lines like Twilight preparing to take over for Celestia and Starlight preparing to take over Twilight School. This season also had some great songs like Lotta Little Things and Better Way to Be Bad. I think the first couple seasons had the best songs, but this season surprised me with how good some of the songs were. Besides that, the very last episode, The Last Problem, while not perfect, was still a great send-off to the series. So yeah, season 9 is the best season, even though it's not by a lot. The worst episode is 246 Great, and the best is Frenemies. Holy fucking shit. I'm done. I'm finally fucking done. I'm done writing, I'm done recording, I'm done editing the audio files, and I'm done editing this fucking video. This took forever to make, but you know what? I had a lot of fun making it. It was great going back, rewatching, and finishing a show I started 10 years ago. I still like the series a lot now, even though it is inconsistent. I added up all the scores for the seasons, and the show should get a 6.95 out of 10. But because my high school math teacher touched me in my no-no spot, I'll round that up to an 8 out of 10. But now that I'm finally done with this monster video, what's next for this channel? Well, if this gets enough views, then maybe I'll do another ranking like this, but for a different show, but who knows. I'll continue to make and upload Harem reviews, but I don't mind trying out other things. Also, because this video is so long, I'm probably going to take a short break after this or the next review. I'm kinda worn out from working on this along with the last couple videos, and I kinda want to relax and do other things like jerking off. I'm bringing sexy back. Hey guys, I guess that's it.